The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this broadcast or podcast without the express written consent of Spaced Out Radio or Spaced Out Radio Limited is strictly prohibited. Listener discretion is advised. Are you experienced?
Stop right there!
From high atop the mountains of British Columbia to you listening around the world, this is Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
They let us play with all our toys, they let us think that we're big boys, they let us make the louder noise, but we ain't rule the world. They let us think we're Superman.
You can follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, on iTunes and TuneIn. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, on Facebook at Spaced Out Radio Show, or on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show.
I try to act so cool, but you know I'm just a fool for you. I will stop till I reach the top just to be there with you.
Dave, oh Dave, are you playing with Bigfoot and aliens again?
Dad, you gotta stop haunting the ghost. It's scaring them.
All right, seriously, put down the pointy sticks.
Oh, the deeper I fall.
Okay! Game on! Game on!
The password is...
All right.
Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go for a ride on Spaced Out Radio. Mr. Bumblefoot, Dave is ready for liftoff.
I try to act so cool, but you know I'm just a fool for you.
Seriously, Dave? Really? Aren't you a little old for a tinfoil hat?
Hello, Toby. Bye-bye. Love you. Bye-bye.
Please take your seat about all. We'll let the engine. It's time to take off. Start. 2, 1. Boost ignition and lift off.
I'm such a lucky guy, 'cause after all this time, it's like the deeper I go, the deeper I fall. The deeper I
Good evening and welcome to Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott, and it's great to have you along for the ride on this Tuesday, September 26th. Wednesday, September 27th, if you're on the East Coast or across the pond. Hope you had a great day and night. We are live right here in the Great White North on top of the mountains of central British Columbia as we are here for your listening needs 7 days a week. We welcome in everyone listening in on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of The Walking Dead. We are live as as well on the United Public Radio Network on 107.7 FM in New Orleans and over 160 countries around the world. We're also live at spacedoutradio.com, on Spreaker, KTLK, The Fringe FM, Renegade Talk Radio out of Las Vegas, the High Plains Talk Radio Network, and if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listeners. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Like our music? Get your horns up for Mr. Ron Bumblefoot THAL, formerly of Guns N' Roses, currently of Art of Anarchy and Sons of Apollo. Bumblefoot is the official music of SOR. Now, if you're on social media, you can check us out on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, you can follow me at Dave Scott, SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. Listen to us on iHeartRadio in the United States. TalkStream Live. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download and subscribe to our shows on iTunes. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. Now, if you want to take part in this show, you got to do me a favor. You got to sign into one of the chat rooms, either on Revolution Radio, Spreaker, the UPRN chat room, or on Facebook at the SOR Space Travelers Club. Or if you're on Twitter, just use the hashtag Spaced Out Radio. I will connect with you there as well. Now, if you head to our website for $5 a month, you can become an SOR Space Traveler. You can also shop at our Spaced Out Radio store. Read up on the encounter online. Check out my latest blog. If you've had an experience you can't explain, we have the SOR Sightlines report for you to fill out, and you can catch some great video viewing from Tim Doyle from UFO Seekers and Leslie Mitchell Clark's Contact TV. Who is flying our friendly skies? Is it aliens? Is it us? Or is it a combination of both? That's one of the mysteries we tackle tonight with guest Olav Phillips, who is a public speaker and a researcher when it comes to studying the secret space program. Do we have bases on the moon, Mars, maybe other planets? It's really hard to fathom if you're not into sci-fi, since we haven't been on the moon since the early 70s. Or have we? Olav is the author of The Secret Space Age, published by Adventure Unlimited Press, as well as being a regular contributor to Paranoia Magazine and Steam Shovel Press. Olav, my friend, always good to have you back on Spaced Out Radio. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
I'm getting over a cold. Feeling much better today than I did yesterday. I was laid up in bed until about noon today before I decided to say, screw this, the cold isn't going to beat me. So I decided to chop up some wood and mow my lawn for the final time before the snow comes. So I'm doing good, my friend. Long time no talk.
Yeah. Yeah, I got allergies myself, so if I cough occasionally, I'm sorry. Makes for bad radio, but I can't really help it.
Well, I understand. I mean, it's a very cool and brisk 94 where you are right now. Is that what I'm hearing?
I don't think it's 94 at this very moment. It's probably in the mid 70s right now.
That's just heaven. That's just heaven.
I don't know. I'd rather be up there where it's cold.
You know what? It's not too cold yet. It's warmed up this week and supposed to continue to warm up. So I think we're going to be in the mid 60s to low 70s this week. So I'm pretty happy about that. I'm pretty happy. You know, it's going to make for an interesting winter. You know, I got to take advantage of it before we switch over to Celsius and we get to like minus 20 to 25. That's when it starts to hurt.
Right.
You know?
Yes, I bet.
Yeah.
I bet.
Yeah. I never really knew how cold could be until last winter. Cold is cold. The minute you the minute you step outside without gloves just to grab some wood, and by the time you get to the wood pile, your fingers are throbbing in pain. That's cold.
Oh wow.
That's very cold.
I don't think I've ever experienced that.
No, it hurts. I'm not going to lie. It hurts, my friend.
I bet it does. It sounds really bad.
Well, you know what? We'll allow you to enjoy your balmy evenings in Northern California while I struggle with trying to get more firewood tomorrow morning. How about that?
Sounds good.
Yeah,
if you have a fire right now.
hey, if you have a chainsaw, you're more than welcome to come up and check and help me out tomorrow. So I'm okay with that.
I don't have a chainsaw. It would be quite a commute for me.
Yes, I know. You know, I understand.
Someday, maybe.
Well, you never know. You never know. You know, the sad part about it, Olav, was this coming weekend was supposed to be our first annual Spaced Out Radio Caribou Paracon up here. And we had everything planned out. We had our guests booked. We had the venue set. Everything was looking very, very good until the end of June, July, when the forest fires started.
Oh, right.
And then, you know, we unfortunately had to cancel it. And, you know, I'm a little upset by that because I was really looking forward to it, man. Really looking forward to it. And unfortunately, we're not going to be doing it this year, but we're going to try to follow up next year after Eric Cooper's Forest Moon Paracon again next year. So hopefully we can get it in there and make sure that we can have a good show when it gets going, man. Do you like doing the Paracons?
You know, I've only actually spoken at 2 conferences. Surprisingly, I've spoken at like MUFON meetings. I mean, I like going as an individual, but I spoke at the Secret Space Conference and I spoke at Paranoia Con, and that's about it.
Do you think there is a real purpose for the Paracons out there to try and get information out?
I do. I think that they're really good for people, you know, to meet up who are like-minded. I mean, I think they used to be a lot more important back in the old days when, you know, when there was a lot of there was a lot of like dismissal of people's beliefs about UFOs or conspiracies. You know, now it's a little more mainstream. It's not quite as hard to talk about it in public. But I do think that it's nice, you know, both as somebody who spoke at one and you know, that's nice because I get to meet the people that read my book. But, you know, even as an attendee, I think it's nice to, you know, be able to chit chat with people who, you know, have a deep understanding or who are very interested in the same kind of stuff as me. So I do think it's important.
Olav, you like to study up on the secret space program. What got you interested in following such a black topic if you consider everything that we do for a living in this field?
You know, I think a lot of it had to do with the maturation that I started out like most people do with UFOs. And, you know, I like all that 4TN stuff. I like ghosts and cryptids and UFOs and the whole thing. But I think that I reached a point where, you know, these UFOs that people were seeing, it's like they're no longer discs. You know, they're wedge shaped. They look like airplanes. And it dawned on me one day that it was like, you know, I don't know if these are alien. You know, they might not be. And so, and I've seen UFOs and I've seen crazy stuff that I can't explain. And I do believe, you know, I think we've discussed in the past that I do believe in you know, aliens and all that. But a lot of these sightings that people were having, you know, they were just sounded very conventional. And I started to look at it more and more. And I think the other thing that that kind of tripped it for me was that I have an obsession with Alternative 3. And when I first saw it, I saw, you know, a 100th generation VHS copy, and I just thought it was laughable, it was stupid. And then one day, you know, I thought to myself, you know, they put a lot of effort into this for being an April Fool's joke. And I thought to myself, you know, if this is real, maybe it's real. And if it's real, every time they talk about something, I should be able to verify that. I should be able to go back and say, okay, well, they referenced this happening. Well, then I should be able to find that. And so I started out, the first thing that's kind of identifiable was a meeting of a science group in the late 50s. And I went and hunted it down. And I said, okay, well, if this actually happened, you know, there will be a record of it on the internet. So I Googled it and I found it. And I looked up what actually was talked about. And lo and behold, you know, the discussion that they were having in that meeting, symposium, I guess, excuse me, was along the lines of what they were talking about Alternative 3. Then I said to myself, you know what, if that happened, then let's go to Alternative 1. Alternative 2 is a slam dunk because that's basically building bunkers. I mean, read Richard Satter. That'll give you all you need to know, But, and then, 3, the third alternative, I thought to myself, well, Richard Hoagland's stuff aside with the face and the fort and the D&M pyramid and all that, I should be able to find something conventional looking on Mars if there's actually a base there. And I found it. I found it accidentally. And, at that point it's like, well, okay, so now, I've determined that this is structurally real. How do they get there? What kind of technology would they use to get there? And other things, like they talk about this notion of something called a batch consignment. If they were harvesting people as slave labor, well, a lot of people would have to disappear. Well, where are there concentrations of people disappearing? It kind of added up like that. And I just got obsessed, and I just won't let it go.
Why do you think there are so few people out there trying to research this topic? Is the information that hard to get out there, or just not too many people believe it's actually going on?
Oh, I think a lot of people are willing. I think it's actually one of the few topics in conspiracy besides like JFK, the people are willing to buy into. As far as why more people don't research it, I don't really know the answer to that. I mean, there are a number of people their research has various degrees of quality, but I don't know. I think a lot of people get hung up on when it comes to UFOs, they get hung up on the idea that everything's aliens. And you have to be able to get beyond that, to say, well, you know what? I see something weird in the sky. Maybe it's not an alien. And that's kind of heretical. So I think a lot of people back away from it.
Well, when you look up in the sky, what are you looking for? What are you able to see just from where you are?
Quite routinely, I see a weird object that comes in from the west and turns north. That's very fast. A lot of times because of the altitude involved with these aircraft, they're very, you can't really make out shapes that well. So they tend to look like, like satellites or stars. But the important factor is that it may look like a satellite, but, satellites don't change course. So you're looking for something moving across the sky at high speed that changes course. That's the easiest way to find it. And I think a lot of times, like I have a friend, she was hanging out with her daughter and another friend and her friend's daughter, and they were just kind of hanging out. And I think they were in a pool swimming or something. And I always tell people, I'm like, just look up. It's that simple. And for some reason, the other day she looked up and she saw a couple of lights in the sky doing circles and making squares and doing all kinds of weird stuff, and it shocked her. And I said, hey, all you got to do is look. It doesn't mean that you're going to see something every time, but the chances of you seeing something interesting are increased if you bother to look.
Do you find, though, with today's people, considering we're always seeming to be buried with our faces in our smartphones or tablets, that we're not doing as much looking as we probably should be?
I think that's absolutely true. And I'm guilty of it too. Again, sorry for the coughing. I'm guilty of it too. My face is in my smartphone, and I'm looking up weird stuff. Because I've come to the realization recently that I'm a wanderer. Like, I'm an informational wanderer, that I like to inhabit those dark corners. And so I'm always I get something in my head and I have to look it up. And so, I might be reading about, some secret CIA project from the 50s or the 60s, or I might be reading the news and, but my face is in my phone. But I make a concerted effort every night to come out into my backyard. I mean, tonight's different. I'm on the phone with you, so I lit myself a little fire here. I got my little campfire going. But typically, on a given night, I'll usually sit out here for an hour and a half and just stare at the sky. Some nights I use my night vision goggles. Some nights I don't. It kind of depends. But, I'm always trying to look. I make a concerted effort to try to, even with all the lights from the city and stuff, I try to, at least keep myself aware.
Do you think it's because you kind of live in that area where there's a lot of military bases, number one, and number two, the Nevada Nellis Air Force Range is not that far away, which obviously leads into Area 51. Do you think that's maybe why you're getting in your area a lot more sightings of strange craft?
Yeah, probably. I mean, I'm on a flight corridor, so anything coming in from the Pacific, they're usually going over my head. I mean, at any given moment, I'll have a number of aircraft flying over my head. So, that's probably true.
Now, when you say a number of aircraft, are you talking both commercial and military?
Usually they're commercial, like flying over my head right now. It's probably an A320 or something heading north. I got another one off to the side that's heading east. They're obviously civilian aircraft. Occasionally coming out of Travis, there was like a C-5A that flew over the other day. I'm also near a small regional airport, so they have a beacon, so they're used as a navigation point. But I think it's mainly because I'm on a corridor, and if you go straight east of me, you're going to end up, you're ending up in a fairly good spot to head into Area 51. I mean, it's north of Area 51, but it's not a straight line, but it's not that far. So I think a lot of these aircraft, they follow the traditional, flight corridors because those are governed and controlled. I mean, a funny story, I told a friend of mine, I said, every once in a while on a Tuesday evening, something weird will come out of the west. And I said, if you listen to Oakland TAC, the air traffic control for inbound, you might hear them talking about it. And lo and behold, he found a number of them on Tuesday nights around the time that I gave him, where the air traffic controller is reporting to other aircraft that there's an unknown type of aircraft flying through the area, but a lot of them are at lower altitude. But he found one that we're looking into where we believe that when the air traffic controller was reporting the aircraft to I think it was like a Delta flight or some other commercial airliner, he reported the speed at 2,400 miles an hour, which is a little below Mach 3. So, and if you've got an aircraft traveling that fast, the displacement of the air around it, the kind of jet wash behind it, is fairly large, so they have to warn the other aircraft.
What would be...
It's out there.
What would be at that speed these days? I mean, let's face it, we're almost 20 years past the retirement of the SR-71, which had a maximum speed of Mach 3.3.
Well, that was the publicly facing speed. I mean, it went faster than that, I suspect. I mean, it could be a lot of things. There are a lot of aircraft. This propensity to see triangular aircraft. It could be something like that coming out from the Pacific. I mean, they're messing with some very sophisticated engines like an Aerospike, where for an Aerospike engine, number one, you have to engage it at high altitude because the air down here is too dense. You need thinner air in order for it to work right. But, you're talking about something that would be traveling at 70,000 or 80,000 feet. And once that Aerospike engages, I suspect that Mach 3 is probably on the low end of what it's capable of. Probably 5, 6 is probably more accurate.
Have you ever been able to confirm any of the studies that you have done on mystery aircraft, black ops type aircraft?
I've had personal observations. A lot of people, they talk about the Aurora program, and it used something called a pulse detonation engine. Basically, it would stream fuel out the back and then ignite it. There are different stories about how it would ignite the fuel and how the fuel flow would work as it's ejecting the fuel out the back end of the plane. But what it would do is that it would move by creating small detonations, small explosions that would push it forward. And this produced something during the daytime, which is called a donut on a rope. Basically, you have a contrail that's like a straight contrail. And then you have these rings around the contrail, and those rings represent where the detonations occurred. So you might think of it as literally looking like a rope with a bunch of donuts hanging at even intervals off of it. Well, one night I was up at East City, and out of the east, I saw something streak across the sky. And there's never noise because it's so high, but I saw flashes at regular intervals. So it was like flash, 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 and just shot across the sky with these flashes lining up in a straight line following it. So that was probably something using a pulse detonation engine. Whether it was an Aurora or some other exotic aircraft, I don't know, but it was definitely using a pulse detonation engine.
We're going to get more into the black airplanes later on in the show. What is your favorite topic to cover? Is it the moon? Is it Mars? Is it trying to figure out all of these different aircraft that are hiding? What is UFO? What is our own man-made craft? What's your favorite topic to cover? I really enjoy Alternative 3, talking about that, because I think it's structural and it's easy to explain, and there's a lot to talk about. But I mean, I don't know. It kind of depends on. We're going to recall Olav right now because apparently maybe his fire got a little too close for comfort here. Hopefully it doesn't go to voicemail. I hope his
call has been forwarded to an automated voice message.
Where the heck did he go? Did his phone die? What are we doing here? Let's try it again. I'm not a big believer that it was something different. We're trying to get Olav back in here.
Your call has been forwarded to an automated voice messaging.
I know why. He's trying to call into Skype, and Skype is being an idiot right now on my end because I haven't updated it. I got to update Skype, but I don't want that Microsoft number to it. You know what I'm saying? So we're just going to wait here for a minute for Olav to get off air. One of the big things about this secret space program is whether or not you actually want to believe if it truly exists. We can sit here and say it does or it doesn't, but I'm not sure how much credibility we can actually give it. We could sit there and say we know that there are black programs. We're trying him again. Maybe he'll pick up this time.
Hello?
There he is. There he is. Did your tinfoil hat accidentally, touch the off button there?
No. My phone said no SIM and went off the network.
Oh, weird. That's weird.
Yeah. It's been known to happen.
I hear you. Well, you know what? Let's blame the alphabet agencies because that's us being in the conspiratorial side. We have to have someone to blame. Which one are we blaming? Which one are we blaming?
I'm gonna blame the NSA.
Okay, I was thinking more the CIA on this one, but we'll have a coin flip.
CIA can't. Well, the CIA supposedly can't function inside the United States, right? I mean, it's a problem for you because you're in Canada. They can function in Canada. but they're not supposed to operate inside the United States.
Yeah, but if they hit it from my end,
that's true.
Then, wow.
Then my SIM card turned off. I don't know.
That was weird. That was weird. We were just getting into you talking about Alternative 3. Now, this was a show, a television show. I believe that was only broadcast once.
That's correct.
Tell us about this program.
So it was a show. Originally, it was supposed to be an April Fool's joke, supposedly. And due to scheduling conflicts and strikes and everything else, they aired it, I believe, in like August. And it was simulcast in the United Kingdom and in parts of Scandinavia. And basically, it's a show about the end of the world and basically the elites leaving and going to Mars. And so they broadcast, it was kind of a War of the Worlds kind of thing. And people started freaking out and calling up the station, calling up the police and saying, is the world ending? And after that, they basically said they'd never air it again. And then at the time it was aired, the head of NBC Drama was actually in London, and he saw it, or he was in England, and he saw it, and he said, oh my God, we got to show this in America. And so he optioned it, and then he took it back to NBC, and Standards and Practices, who's the kind of censors, they said that it was too dangerous to air on television. So at this point, the only place that it's actually aired on actual television supposedly is Japan, and it's aired once a year in Japan. But otherwise it doesn't exist. And the original masters, there's one known master to exist, which is in the possession of Christopher Miles. The guy who filmed it, he has a 16 millimeter copy of it, which is incomplete. It doesn't have the end credits. But, everything else was destroyed in a fire. So it's a TV show that doesn't exist.
What makes it so special, though? Yes, it talks about the end of the world, but I mean, we're so above and beyond that with everybody who has talked about the end of the world, prophecy and everything. Why does this one film stick out and not exist?
Well, I think it's because it's structural, right? That a lot of times when you have these prophecies, prophesizes the end of the world, right? You get this kind of 2012 scenario where everybody's like, the world's going to end in 2012. Well, it's 2017, the world didn't end. Well, it's because we had a consciousness shift. Okay, well, I can't really argue with that because it's metaphysical in nature, right? It was the end of the beginning, and now it's, the middle or whatever. You can't really argue with that because it's not quantifiable. The difference is that when you watch Alternative 3, it's quantifiable. It says, that there's some sort of an ecological collapse. Doesn't really, it was made in the late 70s, so its version is, born out of the late 70s. So they talk about like the oil crisis of the 70s, and there's a lot of B-roll of like people starving and dead animals, dried up corpses of animals and things. But it basically talks about an ecological collapse that leads to an ice age. Well, this is the Venus syndrome, right? That you hear about sometimes, or other people talk about it. And effectively, what it is that you have some sort of a greenhouse situation. The Earth heats up, things melt. It's very unpleasant, and then the ecology snaps back, and it plunges into an ice age, right? And so, that's something that people have said that might occur. And it's quantifiable, that the things that they talked about in relation to that are verifiable, that it is something that scientists have been debating for a long time. And also, the response to it, right, it's not fantastical. Mm-hmm. It's not a fantastical response. The initial response from the 50s, was they say Alternative 1 was to blow a hole in the upper atmosphere and vent the carbon dioxide into space. Well, in 2017, that sounds insane, right? Who in their right mind would think that you could blow a hole in the atmosphere and it's like a cork, and you uncork it and all this gas floats out into space. That's ridiculous. Well, but in the 50s, these guys thought that testing nuclear weapons would catch the air on fire, and burn there's a, voyage to the bottom of the sea, right? That that there's this fireball that was caused by a nuclear test or something. They did like Operation Plowshares, right? Where they used nuclear weapons to try to, they wanted to build a second Suez Canal by detonating a series of nuclear weapons in a chain. They actually tested it in Alaska, and they took a nuclear bomb and detonated it, and they blew a perfect deep water harbor, just perfect, right? The problem is you can't use it for 10,000 years. But at the time, they thought, well, this is, we've got an overabundance of nuclear weapons. We're just kind of producing them like they're going out of style. So, hey, let's try to use them for something other than blowing each other up, So that kind of model was not insane to the time. And then the second alternative was to build bunkers. Well, I can tell you about some scary bunkers, but, we all know that the continuity of government bunkers exists. Canada has quite a number of them, very large ones. In the United States, we have kind of some pretty big ones. And the Russians, Soviets at the time, they built, I would say it's the granddaddy of all bunkers. But, they built bunkers, the seed vaults, or something like 12 operation seed vaults around the world. One was destroyed by Mount Pinatubo, but there are 12 more, 13, nice number. The only part that gets kind of fantastical is this notion of going to Mars, right? That's where people lose it, and they they start thinking to themselves, well, this is a little fantastical. But everything else is very rooted in reality. And, it's other decisions that they made while they were making the film. Like, they have a character called Bob Groden, who's basically Buzz Aldrin. Unfortunately, when Aldrin came back from the moon, for whatever reason, he went through a very hard time in his life, and he got married a couple times. He had some addiction problems with alcohol and other things. Well, Bob Groden has the same kind of problems. He's got a really young girlfriend. He's been married 3 times. He's a raging alcoholic. So again, you're seeing these things where it's structural and they're verifiable. So when you talk about alternative 3, you're not talking about this fantastic story that involves like projection, astral projection, or it doesn't involve like consciousness. It's all very rooted in everyday common sense and science. So I think that's one of the attractions that it had to me, and I think it's one of the reasons that I kept coming back to it, going, well, there's got to be something to it, because it's not fantastic.
One of the things I noticed about it in researching it was that, in the 1970s, this was almost the equivalent of the 1940s War of the Worlds by Orson Welles.
Absolutely. In fact, they referred to it as the kind of English version of the War of the Worlds. What's funny is that I know somebody who's from England, and in '77 when it was aired, his dad watched it. And I asked him, I said, because we were kind of chit-chatting one day, and I said, oh, yeah, you should see if your dad watched it, because he's too young to have seen it. And, he saw it, but he was very young at the time, so he doesn't remember it. But I said, you should ask your dad if he saw it. And he goes, and he called his dad in England. He was talking to his parents, and he asked his dad, and his dad's like, oh, yeah, I remember that. And he goes, yeah, he saw it. I said, well, you asked the wrong question. You should call him again and say, well, what did you think? And so he calls his dad back, and he says, oh, what did you think about it? He's like, oh, it scared the crap out of me. So, it was very frightening. Just like War of the Worlds.
What would have so much meaning to it from what we are seeing today going on, both in the world as well as on the black side of things?
What makes it resonate with me?
Yeah.
I think there are a few different things. One is that, I went through it systematically and tried to confirm all the things that it claims. I think the other thing is that we have, I would argue, rampant over-industrialization. And people can disagree with me and say that climate change isn't real, but and I'm not here to argue with you whether it's natural or man-made. I think that probably there is some natural part of it, but we definitely exacerbate it. I mean, I've lived in this area for most of my life. I lived overseas for a little while when I was young and when I was older. I lived in Europe a couple times, but other than that, I've pretty much lived here. And in my entire life, I've never, ever seen it get to 122 degrees here. I've seen it get to 105. I've seen it get to 102. I survived 105 without air conditioning, but, I went to, I was walking and I saw a digital sign that showed the temperature, and I actually took a photo of it because, nobody believed me, but it said it was 122 here. I don't think in my lifetime, at least in the 37 years that I've been here, it's never been 122 degrees here. So I think there's definitely something going on as far as the climate. It's changing. I also see some things that are kind of unnerving to me. Like you see the Chinese, there was a thing kind of going around the conspiracy world for a while about these ghost cities that the Chinese built, where they built a bunch of cities that basically no one lives in, but they're fully functional cities, right? Well, I got to thinking about it, and they built a few in Africa, but I think those are probably for a slightly different reason. They're more economic, but they built probably 4 or 5 of them in China. And if you look at the locations of them, and you overlay like the ice line from the last ice age, you're looking at cities that are near Mongolia that are just outside the ice line. And if you look at the projections, they're projections, but if you look at the projections for sea level rise over the next, say, 100 years, right, that there are a bunch of these cities that are just beyond the flood zones. So, if you needed to move large amounts of your population out of flood zones or out of areas that are damaged, these cities would actually be very good spots to do it. Now, there is a line of thinking that these cities were built for economic reasons, or to make Chinese companies busy, and they're subsidized by the government. That's probably all partially true. But, the Chinese play the long game. And if they built these cities, there's a purpose, I think, beyond simply economic. And, it would appear to coincide with an ice age or with flooding or some sort of an ecological problem. So you see things like this. And, I'm like anybody else. I have a brain fart, and I think to myself, well, if a bunch of people are being abducted, well, where are they being abducted from? And, you suddenly see the realization of a pattern, and, it just goes to confirm it. So,
do you think, though, that people...
You can see it everywhere.
Do you think, though, that people are that gullible these days to fall for something like Alternative 3, or do you think that it's a perfect reality for governments of the world to hide things under?
I think it's both. I had a philosophy professor when I was in college where he had this favorite saying where he said that, obviously I live around the San Francisco, so a lot of people up here are 49ers fans or they're Raiders fans. Well, he happened to be a 49ers fan. And he said, that most people they're complacent, and they're he used to call them Joe Sixpack, and he said that they're complacent and they're just fine with a 6-pack in the 49ers. So as long as they have access to a 6-pack of beer and they can watch the 49ers, they're totally content with existence. And I think that, in the conspiracy world, we call them sheeple, but I think that I don't like that term, but I think that's probably fundamentally true, that there are a lot of people out there that really don't care, and they think that people like me are crazy, and, they want to go and shop at Target or whatever, and, buy their consumer goods and come home and watch TV. You know, I mean, look at TV nowadays, right? I mean, there are shows that are good. You know, I watch TV. I'm not one of those blow the television up kind of people, but you know, there's a lot of television that really has no purpose. I mean, tell me what Dancing with the Stars really does to add to humanity. You know, I mean, I watched The Last Ship. You know, I love the book, so I watched The Last Ship, and I'm a dystopian, and it's exciting and whatever, but, you know, I don't really watch a whole lot of TV, and because a lot of it is garbage. What is reality television? Why do we care whether Kylie Kardashian is pregnant? Who cares? You know, that you're looking at a group of people that became filthy, stinking rich by filming their daily lives where they walk around and they're brand conscious and they're classists. And, you know, it's like, what benefit does that have, even from an entertainment point of view, you know? Well, so I think that the rise of reality TV demonstrates to you. And don't get me wrong, you know, I love Naked and Afraid, you know, which is reality TV, but, I mean, really, you know, what is it? What does it add to the world, you know?
But we could say the same thing, too, about paranormal television, which includes UFOs, which includes cryptids. You know, it's done the same thing to probably weaken and make this forum more dense than what we were before reality TV got involved.
Yeah, but I think it's also I think reality TV has weakened it. You know, I've always preferred like What on Earth, you know, over watching something. I mean, you watch, you know, some of these shows and they're laughable. I mean, I've been on some of those shows. You know, I really enjoyed being on UFO Hunters. I thought that was a great show. You know, the people involved really cared, and they tried hard to make a good show that was informational. And I was on Unearthed with Scott Walter. I thought that was a fantastic experience. You know, he was deeply interested in what he was doing and trying to you know, figure things out. You know, there are some reality shows where they're more research centric. You know, What on Earth, I think, is a great show. It makes you kind of think, but it's not really a reality show though. But, you know, there are some that work and there are a lot that don't. And I do love Ghost Adventures. For example, I think that it's the best. I watch it all the time, but you know, it doesn't, you're correct. I mean, it doesn't do much to further ghost hunting. I mean, it makes people interested. I think that's probably the benefit, you know, that it kind of mainstreamed, you know, going out on weekends looking for ghosts. But, I mean, that's good. But a lot of them, you know, they're a little weaker. And, yeah, they probably don't do much for the researchers. Sell books.
Well, the one thing Bill Burns said on this show a couple months back when he was on, and it actually surprised me, I asked him point blank, and I was asking him in jest whether or not the rumor was true that he was pulled, and the show was pulled off the air by government officials because they were getting too close to some answers. What those answers were, we don't know. And he was adamantly affirming that wasn't a hoax. That wasn't a rumor at all. That they were brought off the air because of it.
Well, and also what happened to UFO Magazine. You know, he was the publisher of UFO Magazine, and, you know, UFO Magazine dropped off the face of the earth one day. You know, so I think that it was a multi-pronged assault on poor Bill. He's a great guy. Bill Burns is a great guy. He's a good writer, and he's a nice person, and, you know, he's that guy that you want to be writing these books and to do those shows and to publish magazines and whatever. But they kind of toppled his you know, TV show and his magazine. It was interesting to watch.
What do you think he was close to? What do you think he was close to getting the answer to?
I don't know. I mean, it's hard because, you know, I was actually in one of the last episodes of UFO Hunters talking about all this kind of stuff. I was talking about Crash and Tracy, but I think that maybe he was getting too close to some of the more exotic aircraft programs, because one of the things that happens a lot is that, people can't identify something and it's a UFO, and it might be an exotic aircraft. And he kept pushing the limits of that. They kept going after these, these locations. I mean, when I was on, they were talking about Lawrence Livermore, right, which is a national lab, and they do some interesting stuff there. But, he's going to Hanford, he's going to the one on Long Island, he's going to all these national labs and talking to them about stuff. And, it's like, I could see that he might be inadvertently, getting closer to something. But, I don't know that he knows what he got close to. That's one of the problems with this, is that you don't necessarily know. You could be looking for A and kind of stumble across B, or you could be looking at A and piss somebody off because you're getting a little close to C, but you don't even know that C exists. It's one of the inherent problems with conspiracy research.
He believes that it was his research into Dugway in Utah, and then down in Dulce, where they believe they got some sort of photo of a humanoid-type animal. It looked like a cow that had been reconstructed with something else, and they had a photo of it, and they showed it on one of the last episodes. He thinks that's what got him in trouble, because when they stopped filming, or one of their last shoots, he said that one of the men in black actually came up to him and said, "I'm not too worried about what you're going to do or say, because this is your last season anyways." And they were the #1 ranked television show on cable TV at that time. And for cable networks to pull off their #1 show and #1 rated show for anything, that's just a money-losing proposition for them.
Well, a similar thing happened with a show called Rubicon, where, it lasted one season and then it just vanished. And what's weird about Rubicon is that normally, like with UFO hunters or whatever, you can go on Amazon and get it, or you can get it on Hulu, or you can get it, at the History Channel or whatever. But in the case of Rubicon, it's just unavailable. So, that was a fictitious show, but the model of what was going on, I think, hit a little too close to home to somebody. And its ratings were decent. I mean, they were not bad ratings, and they still canceled it after one season. So, UFO Hunters will not be the first nor the last show that's strangely canceled.
Well, you know what? It would be nice to see them get back on it, because Bill and his team were doing some great work, some great research.
They were.
Great
guys, too.
Yeah. I didn't, you know what? There's certain people, as we grow in this show, that you're always a little bit wary of, because you wonder if they have that, that television attitude, if I could use that, premise. And I was absolutely surprised and stunned of how classy and how excited Bill was to be on the air with us.
Oh, he's a great guy, and he does really good research. In fact, if he never told you about the platform that he saw over Vegas, the next time he's on, ask him to tell you about the platform over Vegas. That's a good one. I like that one.
Well, you have to fill us in a little bit on that one then.
Well, basically, he tells a story about being in Vegas. I think he was on a strip or something, and he saw some sort of a hovering military platform just hanging in the sky, like a big square that had all kinds of stuff on it. And he couldn't identify it in 1 minute. If I remember correctly, 1 minute it was there, the next minute it wasn't. A very, very strange kind of situation. I mean, and not completely beyond the pale. I know several people who, not far from where I live, saw a rectangular object that did not look aerodynamic in any way, shape, or form. Cruise across the sky. So maybe that was a weapons platform too. I don't know, but it kind of sounded similar to what Bill had talked about seeing.
We're down.
He tells the story much better than I do.
We're down to about 90 seconds here before we have to go to our first break of the night. Do you think that because of what happened to UFO hunters and Bill Burns, that maybe a lot of these reality TV shows that are out there are going to be a little bit more finicky with their investment on how close they can try and get?
Probably. So I think the producers and the showrunners, they pay more attention to it. Absolutely. Because you don't want to get canceled, then you stop making money. Right?
Do you think there's still money to be made, though, in reality TV, considering, in reality, it's very oversaturated right now?
I do. I think that there are certain premises that would work. In my time as a conspiracy researcher, I've come across a few things that I actually think would make sense to be done in that way. But I think it's overblown in general. But I think there are some very specific applications where it actually make a hell of a show, like a UFO hunters. But I think it would make there's certain conditions where it would make a hell of a show.
All right, Olav, I'm going to get you to hold on here for just a moment as we are going to step out for our first break of the night. Olav Phillips is our guest. You can check him out at paranoiamagazine.com. His writing is in there. He's all over the place. Just Google him. It's one of the best when it comes to the secret space program, which we're going to get into in hour number 2. We're also going to get into your questions as well. Is Area 51 still the place to be? What about the Black Knight satellite? How about the Apollo missions that were said not to happen? We'll find out more on Spaced Out Radio in hour number 2 right after this.
365 days a year, we're in the field, investigating UFO sightings, talking to alien abductees, and visiting secret military locations like Area 51. We're UFO Seekers, official partner of Spaced Out Radio. Follow our daily search for the truth at ufoseekers.com or like us on social media. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
From coast to coast to coast, Blacklight Uncharted is taking on the paranormal across Canada. From ghostly hauntings to the UFOs flying above in conjunction with MUFON Canada, we're closely investigating what's going on in the northern skies and checking out the apparitions that walk among us. Check out our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com. We want to know your thoughts, we want to hear your experiences, and we want you to share your stories. The answers are out there, and we intend to find them.
Would you like to become one of our space travelers? All you have to do is click on the Space Travelers icon at spacedoutradio.com. For only $5 a month, you can get access to some great prizes, as well as private monthly shows, newsletters, and a members-only section on our website. Become a space traveler today.
It's paranormal news at its finest. Welcome to The Encounter. At spaceoutradio.com, The Encounter online is SOR's trusted news source for everything weird and strange going on around the world. This is news editor Eric Markham. Our team of journalists are scouring the planet for those strange stories that rarely make the mainstream. No fear-mongering or fake news here. Head over to spaceoutradio.com and encounter The Encounter.
Want to learn more about aliens, cover-ups, conspiracies, cryptids, and the paranormal? All you have to do is tune in S4 as we take over the Spaced Out Radio night, starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, each and every Saturday night, right after Spaced Out Saturdays. Hi there, this is Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. Join me, Corey Ruiz, and friends as we discuss the hot topics of the night. It's fun, entertaining, and as dark as the night. Find us at spacedoutradio.com.
Hey, this is Canadian Paranormal Investigator Mike Moore. The third Wednesday of every month, I'll be teaming up with Dave Scott to bring you Ghosts of the Great White North. Each month, we will bring on guests from across Canada to discuss their ghostly encounters. Canada is a paranormal hotbed with stories you've never heard, so we're going to bring them to you. So get comfy on your Chesterfield, grab a donut, and join us, eh?
Are you an experiencer? Have you had run-ins with strange creatures you can't explain? ETs, Dogman, Bigfoot, werewolves? They're enough to scare the daylights out of anyone. Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski from your 4-Cop. And on the last Monday of every month, you can listen to me and the host, Dave Scott, talk about the weird and the strange, being reported on Spaced Out Radio. I'm going to bring my investigations and sources, you bring your experiences, and we'll figure out the rest together. Strange Days on Spaced Out Radio. Come tune us in at spacedoutradio.com.
Want a place to share your experiences without feeling judged? We have the place for you. If you've experienced sightings or contact with ETs, ghosts, cryptids, or UFOs, and you'd like someone to confidentially look into the matter, just fill out an SOR Sightlines report. Our goal is to help you get the answers you need to the experiences you've had with our professional team of researchers. Your information stays 100% confidential. The SOR Sightlines report. Fill out your experience today only at spacedoutradio.com.
Psychic Sundays, spiritual communication, ET contact, Sasquatch in your backyard. We will have it all on Cosmic Passport with me, Elizabeth Anglin. Each Sunday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, at spacedoutradio.com, I will take you on a journey of enlightenment. The goal is learning from the soul on out. We'd love it if you joined our experience. Cosmic Passport, heard Sundays at spacedoutradio.com.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
From British Columbia to Northern California, Pacific North Weird has Cascadia covered. Check out our feature videos at spacedoutradio.com, where I, Vincent Zunza, and my super sleuth partner Alexandra Sullivan track down the weird and strange stories from around the Pacific Northwest, from Bigfoot to Mel's Hole and everything in between. This is what makes life exciting. So why report the normal when we can report the Pacific North Weird right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Don't have time to listen to Spaced Out Radio live? Wherever you are, the car, the office, the shower, or even if you're traveling, we're right here for you. Each Spaced Out Radio show can be found on iTunes, TuneIn, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. It's the perfect way for you to catch up on our shows. For more information, just head over to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and tune in to us today.
Welcome to Spaced Out Saturdays with me, Dave Cruz from Beyond the Strange. Our weekly feature on spacedoutradio.com will take you around the world discussing everything from the paranormal to the latest conspiracies from the top guests in their fields. We won't leave any story uncovered. Spaced Out Saturdays at spacedoutradio.com starting 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. And hit us up on Twitter using the hashtag SpacedOutRadio. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Welcome back to the second hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Great to have you with us. Tomorrow night on the program, we step into the paranormal. It's that time of the month. John Tenney will be back with us as he comes in every 2 months to talk all things paranormal with the paranormal weirdo himself. We get going at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern time at spacedoutradio.com. We want to welcome in everyone listening in on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of The Walking Dead. We are live as well on the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans and over 160 countries around the world. Great to have you with us as well. We are also live on KTLK, The Fringe FM FM, Renegade Talk Radio out of Las Vegas. And if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Macropodine. Macropodine is your password. Make sure you use it wisely, Space Travelers, as Bill sets a password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. Now, if you want to follow us on social media, you can do so on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Use the hashtag Spaced Out Radio if you want to connect live with us during the show as well. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. You can also join us for live chat on Facebook in the SOR Space Travelers group. You can also follow me on Instagram, Dave Scott, SOR. You can listen to us on iHeartRadio in the United States, TalkStream Live, tune us in on TuneIn, and download this show and others on iTunes. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including joining the SOR Space Travelers Club for $5 a month. You can shop at our Spaced Out Radio store, read the Encounter online, rock out to some Bumblefoot, watch some great video footage from UFO seekers and Contact TV, and a whole lot more at spacedoutradio.com. Tonight we're talking with Olav Phillips. He is our resident guru when it comes to the secret space program. You can check out his website, paranoiamagazine.com. Olav, welcome back.
Thanks.
Right before the break, we were talking about reality television, whether it's doing a lot of good or a lot of disinformation or mistrust with the public audience and getting a wrong interpretation for what we are doing. You wanted to make another comment on that?
Yeah, so, there are there's a dichotomy in like the way that they're presented, right? So I think on one hand, you take like a Ghost Adventures, and mind you, I'm a huge fan of those guys. I love that show. And they're out there getting in the door, right? They're getting into places that normally, a lot of people can't get into. And I think it's good that they're presenting it in a way that's exciting and entertaining. And they're making an effort, I think, at some level to use new technologies and to demonstrate that these things are real, and I think that's good. I think that it allows people who are interested in ghost hunting, a medium by which to see things happen, right? And, they're very provocative, and I think it's very entertaining. So I think on one hand, that's good for like mainstreaming it, right? I don't think they're doing a massive people could argue with me, but I don't think they're doing a massive disservice to it, right? On the other hand, you take like Les Stroud, Survivor Man. I'm a huge Les Stroud fan. I every time he makes more Survivor Mans, I'm on it. I think Les Stroud is a really cool guy, and I think that he does something very interesting. Well, he decided, I think partially because he's interested in the topic, obviously, but I think that he had heard weird stuff when he's out. He said a number of times that when you're out there, in the middle of nowhere by yourself, you see weird things and you hear weird things. Well, he had an entire series where he went after Bigfoot, that he wanted to find evidence of Bigfoot. He had various kinds of researchers come on and explain to him how to find Bigfoot, and he would try. And, it was hit and miss, but, it was a guy who was very passionate about it. And I think that what Les Stroud does in Survivor Man and in when he did the Survivor Man Bigfoot, I think that's actually a really good example of how you can use reality television in a way that is beneficial. So I wanted to add that I think Les Stroud really got it right. That when he did the Bigfoot thing, I think because he would talk to the researcher, and you could tell that he kind of took it with a grain of salt, like, okay, sure, but then he would actually try to go into these forest areas and stay out there for days and days and try to find stuff and contact Bigfoot or whatever. But I think that in general, when the stuff that Les Stroud has done, for me personally, I find it to be beneficial.
I really like Les Stroud, too, when it came to Bigfoot. We've been trying so hard to get him on this show, and unfortunately, he's so deep with his producers and people who you need to go through, his publicists and everything. We haven't been able to correlate anything just yet, but we are efforting to do so when it comes to it. Hopefully one day we will, but,
I got him on Ground Zero. I got him on Ground Zero once for 45 minutes.
See, that's the problem.
I was so proud.
That's the problem, is the timeline. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
A lot of these guys, like I've had a number of television people say, yeah, I'll come on the show. How long is the interview? Well, we do a minimum of 2 hours, maximum of 3. Yeah, I can do 30 minutes. Well, you can't get anything done in 30 minutes. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends. It depends on the person. I've gotten some fairly famous people to come on for longer. I think it depends on the situation. But yeah, no, I know what you mean. Back in the day, I used to be a producer for a radio show, and one of the things that when it comes to those guys, you kind of have to make special rules, right? It's like I normally do a minimum of 2 hours, but for this guy, well, we'll call it 45 minutes.
Absolutely. And once we reformat the show a little bit, which we are planning on doing here in the next little bit, then we would be able to have the ability to do that. That's not a problem. Yeah. But you have to make the changes and you got to stick tight to it. So, the one thing one thing that we do, and I mean, you're one of these guys who will go 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours if we went into overtime.
Oh yeah, I don't care.
Sure. You never know where it's going to go. It's definitely last minute. You make life easy because you've been on the other side. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah. I have been on the other side. It's tough. I have a lot of respect for you.
Absolutely. Do you mind if we get to some audience questions here?
Oh, absolutely. Anytime.
All right. On Twitter at #SpacedOutRadio, Canadian Joe is asking, why are we still so fixated on Area 51 when all the real action happens supposedly at Wright-Patterson?
I think that we're fixated on Area 51 because there is a lot of stuff that goes on there, and I think them denying that it existed for so long probably plays into that. Because, I mean, it's like anything, right? If you tell somebody don't smoke, they're going to smoke, right? If you tell somebody Area 51 doesn't exist, yet there are legions of people that go out to the EG&G terminal and take their photo, in front of the EG&G sign with the Janet flight taking off to flight Area 51. I think that kind of breeds a mythos and people become obsessed with it, right? I think the Lazar's stories, I think, had a lot to do with it as well, because he's one of those guys where for 20 years, almost more than 20 years, well, over 20 years now, but for over 20 years, I mean, he stuck to his story. So it makes people wonder what's really going on out there, and people have sensationalized it. And meanwhile, Wright-Patterson's this big old Air Force base that sits over in Ohio, and it's been there forever, and everybody knows they do weird stuff there, and it kind of, I think that it was never given the mystique of Area 51. And frankly, that may be intentional, that there are things that go on at Wright-Patterson that they don't want to talk about. And they probably push for things to go toward Area 51. Because, I mean, there's a whole bunch of weird stuff that happens in the Antelope Valley down toward LA. There are a number of strange facilities, out in the desert out there down by LA that people don't really talk about a whole lot. There seems to be a fixation with Dugway and China Lake and Area 51 because they're enormous, and they're constantly buying land or seizing land to make it even harder for you to get photos of it. I think that just makes people more curious.
Is there still a lot of action happening at Area 51 to your knowledge?
Oh yeah, I mean there was just recently a crash out at Area 51, and this guy who was a very senior pilot, test pilot, he died in the crash, and they won't talk about what he was flying. They just talk about what a hero he was and what a great guy he was, and this is the great career he had, but they won't tell you what he was flying. But whatever he was flying, he cracked it up, and supposedly. At the same time, there were two A-10 Warthogs that were flying in the same pattern, and when his aircraft crashed, that it actually caused the two A-10s to crash too, but those pilots survived. So there's all this stuff going on out there. Absolutely. Because it's so remote, it's very hard to get a line of sight to the actual facility. And you can fly things in and out of there pretty easily, because you're talking about just massive amounts of desert. There's always going to be somebody like me who's willing to go out and sit out there in the desert waiting for something to fly over their head, but that's not the majority of people. Majority of people are waiting to see it on the History Channel or Sci-Fi or the Science Channel or CNN. So, it's remote enough that you can get things in and out of it. In fact, I'll tell you, there's an interesting, what's the name of it, but there's an interesting base on the outer edges of the Nellis Range. There used to be a Department of Energy landing strip, and they turned it into a drone base. And you can actually see it on satellite photos of this drone base. It looks like an airport in miniature, and they fly various kinds of drones out of there. But they're not going to talk about that.
Isn't that at Tonopah where they do that?
Maybe it is. I forget. There's a name of the actual airfield, but it escapes me right now. But yeah, it's out toward Tonopah. And
Yes.
I mean, they're flying Predator drones out of there, and it's creepy, because the only reason that you can tell how big it is because of the parking lot. So you see somebody pulled up in a Ford F-150, big old truck, and it's compared to these little buildings. It's kind of strange.
Couple questions from John in the Spreaker chat room. Number one, he is asking, have you ever heard of Solar Warden?
Yes.
What's
Absolutely.
your thoughts on that?
It was actually one of those strangest interviews I ever had. I was on a radio show out of Portland, and this guy called in the last 10 minutes, and he said, I'm an old guy, and back in the mid 70s, I worked at this test facility down in Southern California, and he's like, I worked on this base, and it was guarded by federal marshals, and we built a thing called Solar Warden, and it was a 3-satellite constellation that had all kinds of weaponry on it. And then there was another satellite that was a hunter-killer. So they put 3 of them into equatorial orbit, and then the fourth one was a hunter-killer that was autonomous, that actually could move around and go wherever it wanted. This is way before Reagan was elected. This is under Carter, so it's way before Star Wars. These guys built and deployed a Solar Warden. There's another line of thinking on Solar Warden where it has to do with the secret space program and ships that are out there protecting us from aliens and some other stuff. But the one that I believe has the most credence is this guy, because he was on for exactly 9 minutes, and then he was like, okay, bye. And when they tried to figure out where he had called from, the phone number didn't make any sense, and there's no way to find him, and he didn't say his name. He's all, my name's unimportant. It was a very strange call. He was very detailed.
See, that's why I look forward to getting on mainstream, is for those phone calls right there.
They're different. They're different. I mean, I could relay a number of stories of weird things that happened to us on that show. There are some really strange things that happen.
Well, you know what? That's why we got to get this bigger. Get this bigger, so we get the weird stuff happening here too, besides aliens running about by the window. You know what I'm saying?
aliens running around in your backyard. That's pretty strange.
Exactly. Exactly. I should tell you, I don't think I ever told you what happened after you and I hung up that night. See, the last time Olav was on was when Carl and his buddies came. So you and I hung up, and I remember I told you I had to get a hold of our Keith Andrews, who is my ET guy. So I get a hold,
and then you were going to go out. You were going to go outside and look by your cars.
Exactly, but I went upstairs on my patio. So as I go up onto my patio, I start hearing this weird clicking sound coming from my backyard and up my driveway. And I get a hold of Keith on the phone, and out of nowhere, Keith says, "Have you heard any strange sounds?" And I said, yes. I said, it sounds like a clicking sound, like a kind of thing.
Yeah,
and
that goes with the grace.
Exactly. And so I said it happened in my backyard, and then it happened up my driveway by my trees. He goes, "Does it sound more like this?" And he did it with his throat, and I said, "Yes, that's it. That's it." And then it happened again as soon as he heard that. He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "You got grays running around your yard right now." And I'm like, wow. He goes, "That's He goes, "From what I'm picking up, it's Carl and his two buddies. However, his two buddies are the ones communicating right now because they're freaking out." I said, "Well, why are they freaking out?" He goes, "Well, normally, when they're around, humans run away. Yet you're standing there saying, 'Where are you, boys?'" You know what I'm saying? So these two two grays were a little freaked out that I'm standing on my patio waiting for them to show themselves, and I'm challenging them to show themselves because I was literally, "Damn it, Carl." I mean, people hear me on the show all the time say, "Damn it, Carl," but I actually was out there. "Damn it, Carl," and they never showed. Yeah. They never showed.
That was one of the weirdest. That's one of the weirdest experiences I've had on a radio show. I have to be honest. That was one of the strangest experiences I had because you literally stopped the interview. You're like, "There's an alien outside my window."
Yeah,
never had that happen to me before.
Well, you and I were on the phone when I was in my carport, right below my patio, when I told you there was something walking in between my two vehicles.
I can confirm that. Yes, you did.
Yes. Damn it, I got to get some cameras up. I definitely got to get some cameras.
You do. I do.
Well, hopefully it can help this show take off. That's what we need.
Absolutely. I'll do whatever I can.
All right. John is asking his second question here, and that is, have you ever heard of the late Bill Tompkins, and what did you think of him?
Bill Tompkins. The name sounds familiar. I can't place it.
Well, we can get back to that then. Bob is asking, why don't they use the Solar Warden program to take out North Korea's nuclear weapons program and their satellites?
Well, because if you take out North Korea, right, then you don't have anything to confuse the population about, right? If you ever read or watch the movie of 1984, the movie's pretty good. But if you read it as well, there's a notion of East Asia and Eurasia are fighting Oceania, and Oceania and East Asia are fighting Eurasia, and it's this constant rotation because what the war did in 1984, and Orwell was very much a prophet. What the war did in 1984 is that it destabilized the population and it made them scared. And when people are scared, they're more willing to be docile and to be led. And so, I think that it serves as a distraction, right? That it's a distraction. I mean, look, with one submarine, one guided missile submarine, we could surface it 100 miles off the coast of North Korea and rain down enough cruise missiles to destroy a large amount, not only the nuclear test facilities, but, a pretty decent portion of the artillery that lines along the border. That's the big problem, right, is that the North Koreans have all this artillery sitting along the 38th parallel, and it's within, and Seoul, the city of Seoul, is within artillery range of North Korea. So, anything you do, the population in South Korea is afraid that the North Koreans will start shelling Seoul. But, the truth is that, with a couple of planes and a couple subs, we could probably reduce, a lot of that military capability to ashes. But it's like, if you fix the problem, then you don't have anything to scare people with. And then you look at the hurricanes. It's like, how many Category 5 hurricanes can you have lined up in a straight line that are going to hit the same area over and over again? I mean, there are parts of Antigua, and I forget the name of the other island that's adjacent to it, that are literally uninhabitable. The jungle was like ripped out of the ground. So, it's like there are these Category 5 storms that are lined up in straight lines. Now you've got, comments about the NFL. It's like, how much distraction do we actually need? And I think this North Korea is another part of that.
Question from Twitter at #SpacedOutRadio. This one comes from Cousin Gary, literally my cousin, in Edmonton.
All right.
Good hockey guy. Good hockey guy, too. He's saying, Olav, do you know of NASA missions or claims that never took place? Not talking about the going to the moon conspiracy. Does NASA actually tell any stories?
Well, I mean, early on in NASA, pretty much everybody involved was military. And so that, anybody that they put up anywhere was military. So you have a whole situation there. I mean, I would argue to you that they launched something called the Mole, which is a manned observation laboratory. It was a kind of miniaturized sky lab that was owned by the Air Force. NASA probably put that up. I mean, I think there's a lot of stuff that goes on with NASA. I think a lot of NASA is a cover-up, that they use it to cover other operations. There is an interesting thing, though, called the Byrne Memo, where Kennedy ordered the director of NASA to work with the director of the CIA to brief him on the defensive capabilities of NASA. The problem is that NASA doesn't have any defensive capabilities because it's a civilian space agency, so it should have no military assets. But if they don't have military assets, why was Kennedy ordering the director of NASA to work with the director of the CIA to come up to speed on what the military capabilities of NASA are? There's another memo from about the same time where Kennedy was ordering the head of the CIA and NASA to work with the Soviets to determine what was theirs and what was ours, because we didn't want to be shooting stuff down. So, that's a lot of cloak and dagger stuff involving NASA, right? For being a civilian space agency that launches little rovers to Mars, and can't seem to find the moon. That's a lot of military capabilities that they're supposed to be describing and discussing. Granted, the Byrne Memo is a little controversial, but, I would argue to you that it's probably real.
Let's get into NASA a little bit, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Are you a big proponent that the Apollo missions continued after 17?
Yes.
Why is that?
There's a series of films that were uploaded onto YouTube and another location that purport to show a mission to the moon by Apollo 21. And the guy who uploaded them went by the name of Rutledge. And there's some fundamental problems with his story that, his English was always very poor. And he said that that's because he had been living in Rwanda. Of all the garden spots on the earth to go live in, he had chosen Rwanda, which, they had a genocide there, because he fell in love with a Rwandan woman and he wanted to live with her. And so he moved to Rwanda. Well, I don't buy that for a minute. And there's some problems with, his descriptions of things. He said he was a commander, and there is no commander in the Air Force, and, things like that. But when you watch the films, there's some very interesting things about them. Number one, Apollo 21, supposedly went to the moon to recover stuff off of a crashed UFO, a very long cylindrical UFO that was embedded in the side of the moon. Well, there's a lot of footage of them flying over it and photographing it. And the surface of it is very interesting because it has a kind of Mayan feel to it. It also shows significant asteroid meteorite impact damage. And the meteorite impact damage, when it hit whatever this thing is, you can see where it melted around the sides of it, where it bubbled the metal and warped it. I mean, these are little tiny things, right? And another thing that's very interesting about it is that when they're filming flying over it and all this, they're shooting it through one of the windows of the Apollo pod and the command module, and there's etchings in the windows of the LEM and the Apollo module for various things. On the LEM, it's to determine altitude and other things and distance. And so when they're filming it out the window of the LEM and they're filming it out the window of you see these etchings where it's actually etched in the glass. And that's a lot of effort for somebody who's going to fake it, right? And so when they finally land, there's footage of them kind of like low gravity moving around inside the cabin and kind of like twirling cameras and the usual kind of stuff that you saw Buzz Aldrin do in Apollo 11. Well, one of the things that they do is that they film outside the LEM because it's landed on the moon, and there's a vehicle that's sitting just outside the LEM, and that vehicle is called a Lukenhold, and the Lukenhold was a lunar rover that the Soviets had sent. I forget how many they sent, like 3 or 4 of them, to the moon, and they're very ugly, very kind of beetle-shaped, huge. They're enormous. In fact, they were used in a movie. I can't remember the movie, but the guy hacked into it and hacked into the thing to create a transponder to land the ship, and he got into. I think it was. I forget which one it was that was in, but anyway, it doesn't matter. So this Lukenhold is sitting out there, and it's a perfect duplicate of what it actually looked like. The size, shape, everything looks like it's been used, doesn't look brand new, looks kind of thrashed. And, why would you go to the trouble to build that thing? I mean, that's a lot of effort if you're going to fake it, right? Also, because it's in it, you can determine where they landed, because the positions of these rovers are public knowledge, right? The Soviets didn't particularly hide it when they landed it. Well, funny enough, there's one of them where if you go not far from it, you actually find this bizarre rectangular ship kind of cast into the side of the moon. And I mean, in actual NASA photos, it's there, and some of the detail is there too. So, long story short, it's a whole lot of effort to fake it. And it looks, I mean, there's problems with it, but I think at least some of the footage is real. In fact, there's footage of them actually getting into the command module. And when they show them, it's literally a film of the gantry, these guys with Rockwell jumpsuits loading them into the command module. I mean, it looks like something out of one of those NASA movies of any other Apollo mission. And supposedly they recovered a body of a woman. My friend had a friend who was a mortician, showed him the film, and he believes that body was a real body. It was basically freeze-dried. He said that there was a waxy buildup on the surface of the skin that was consistent with a dead human. And it's just a lot of effort. They're very creepy to watch. But they are there. They're out on YouTube. Just look up Apollo 21 or Mona Lisa. What is it? It's Mona Lisa EBE, and you'll find it. They're very creepy. And I think there's enough evidence there that something happened. I don't believe all the footage is real, but at least some of it is.
A lot of people would have a hard time believing that something that obvious would be sitting on YouTube.
Yeah, but you can't verify it. It's the same old thing, right? This happens a lot in conspiracy research. That you come across something, but you can't verify it. And if you can't verify it, it's as good as Enron stock shares. It's just paper. But it makes, if you think about it and you look at it and you investigate it, it makes you ask questions. But there's never enough there to actually do anything about it. Now, there is a guy named Lucas Scantambulo from Italy. He self-published a book of transcripts where he talked to Rutledge. He was communicating with Rutledge over email. And, the Rutledge's explanations just defy logic. Some of it is interesting, some of it is possible. There's a lot of BS in there too. And I think it falls into your typical kind of disinformation scenario where it's fundamentally true. There's enough true there to make you want to believe it, but there's not enough there to actually be true. They call it the golden thread. The golden thread is real, but the rest of it is wrapped in BS. But I do think that Apollo 21, the story of it actually does need more investigation. I'll give you an example. The Rutledge claimed that one of the people on board the ship was a Russian, Alexei Leonov, and he, I think it was Leonov, and he actually went with them to the moon. And during that time, this Russian scientist, he was MIA. Nobody can actually pin down exactly where he was at the time. Now, that could be a hoaxer, looking this guy up, getting his name out of 2010, looking his name up and going, well, during this block of time, his movements were somewhat mysterious. I'll just say he was on the moon. That's possible. But again, that's a lot of effort. There was a performance artist in France that supposedly took credit for it, but nothing that this guy had ever done was on that scale. Because, he would have literally had to have built an entire LEM, because they show the entire interior of the LEM. So he would have had to faithfully reconstruct the interior of the LEM. He would have had to reconstruct the surface of the moon because they film it through the windows. He would have had to know what a Lucan hold is, which most people don't, known where they were, known that there's this weird object not far from one of the landing points. You add it all up, and it seems a little far-fetched this guy did it. And by the way, the guy's dead. So, you can't ask him any questions, right? So I think there is some truth to it. The question, it's one of those things where it's always in the back of my mind that I should do more about it. I just haven't. But it's definitely very interesting.
If these Apollo missions did happen after 17, where were they launching the rockets from?
Edwards Air Force Base. There are a number of odd launches during the time period that Rutledge claimed. They had the capability to launch something Saturn V-ish from there. So, yeah, they could launch it from Edwards. It would take some effort, but it could be done.
But wouldn't the public have noticed when big rockets like that are going up into space?
Sure, but they fire rockets off from Edwards, every so often. It's not necessarily something that would draw, incredible attention. They're, a lot of the defense satellites that they launch from Edwards. The NRO stuff or, whatever, they launch those things from Edwards.
Okay, but why make the last 3 to 4 Apollo missions secret?
Well, they found an alien ship with alien bodies on board, and they're not going to cop to that. If what you see in Apollo 21 is true, And according to Rutledge, 19 and 20 failed for some reason. The 21 was the first one to get there, and there was no 22.
Do you think then that they were told, or that many believe that we were not supposed to go back to the moon?
No, I think that we don't go back to the moon because it's a bit of a problem that you've got to cover up all the stuff that's up there, right? So you've got to prep the landing site. You've got to make sure they don't land off target because I wouldn't necessarily tell the astronauts that there's stuff up there because you want it to seem genuine, right? So you have to prepare a landing site. You have to make sure that everything that you're doing is kind of somewhere else. It's a lot of effort to cover it up.
So you do believe then that there are bases on the moon right now with human beings on there?
Absolutely. In fact, I think that you can see the telltale signs. There's a number of NASA photos that seem to show tracks, like wheel tracks across the surface of the moon. There's a thing called transient light phenomenon, TLP, where TLP, granted, has been going on for a long time, but astronomers actually catalog it, and you can Google it. They see light spontaneously moving across the surface of the moon, and they've never been able to really identify what caused it. There's a lot of stories about how it's plasma or this or that, but nobody knows for sure what actually causes the TLPs. But they literally will watch lights moving across the base of the moon, and they catalog it and they keep track of it, which I think is kind of strange.
Do you believe then what Neil Armstrong said on the emergency channel? They are here, they are on the hill, and they are watching us.
Yeah, I think he was probably seeing other astronauts from one of the bases, like standing on the moon, watching them. So because I don't think they knew what was up there.
How would they not know, or NASA not know, in sending Armstrong and Aldrin up to the moon, that there was...
NASA knowing is different than Armstrong and Aldrin knowing, right? Because if you tell Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, hey, there's a bunch of stuff up there, keep it a secret, they would. They were stand-up guys. They would do that. But you run the risk of them coming off like they're acting, right? And they were off target. They missed their landing target. They were running out of fuel when they landed. I mean, you can hear the conversation where Armstrong is landing the thing and Aldrin's reading off the altitude and fuel consumption. And they're running out of fuel. I mean, they missed the landing target. So, they landed in a place that was suboptimal for covering it up. So, and look at Neil Armstrong. He comes back and he just disappears off the face of the earth. He wants, he does the ticker tape parade and all that stuff, but then he went incognito for the rest of his life. And Aldrin's a very interesting guy. I was watching a C-SPAN interview with him, and somebody asked him what it was like to actually be on the moon. And his explanation was very interesting. He said, it's not something that I can describe to you in words. He's like, it's just an experience that you have, but you can't really explain it. Looking from the moon and seeing the Earth and all that stuff and going through that experience. And he said, he relayed the story that not long after he had come back from the moon, he was at a party. Obviously, I mean, they're the heroes of the hour, constantly at parties, right? Well, he's at this party, and this guy asked him, they said, what was it like to be on the moon? And he said that his mind went blank, and that all he could think of was the words magnificent desolation, which is actually the name of his book. And then he got sick to his stomach, ran to the bathroom, and threw up. And that's, to me, I like Buzz Aldrin. I think he's a stand-up guy, and I think that he's an insanely smart engineer. But that sounds like a trigger response. And he gets angry when you ask him, did you really go up there? And it's like, you know, for me personally, if I had gone up there and I knew that I had done this thing, you know, if I could get a little frustrated if I got asked that, but punching a guy out for it, I think is, even if the guy's a little belligerent, I think is a little overreaction, right?
I thought it was fantastic, to be honest.
Oh, that he punched Bart Sabrell?
Yeah.
Well, Bart Sabrell was dogging him. I mean, you kind of understand it, but still, you know, I think it was a little excessive. But the interesting thing is, on that same C-SPAN interview, there's a point at which Buzz Aldrin looks into the camera. And this is C-SPAN, like the world's most boring channel. You know, there's very little that's interesting on C-SPAN, right? And he looks into the camera, he goes, look. He says, we've got to go to Mars. And he gets really passionate. He looks right in the camera. And the guy interviewing him is like, what? And he goes, we got to go to Mars. He goes, you know, I swear to God, this is real. You can Google it. He goes, you know, there's a monolith on Phobos. He's like, I don't know who put it there. God put it there. The universe put it there. Who knows who put it there? But there's a monolith on Phobos. We have to go back. We have to find that thing. And he's like, we've got to go to Mars. There's stuff on Mars. We've got to figure out what this stuff is because it shouldn't be there. And then and he's very passionate about this. And the guy who's doing the interview goes, oh, hey, look, we have a phone call. And this guy comes on and he's like, oh, you know, General Aldrin or whatever. He says, you know, I saw the patent you had on this airlocking system. Can you tell me more about it? You know, your typical C-SPAN phone call, right? And like Buzz Aldrin just like snaps out of it. He's just like, click. Yeah, I made it, you know, I designed this thing and it's really cool and it does this and this and this. And he just like totally forgot that he had just gone on a rant about there being a monolith. He used the word monolith, you know, on Phobos. So, you know, there's some weirdness there. So it's almost like there's some level of conditioning. You know, I want to give Aldrin the benefit of the doubt because I think he's a hero. Him and Armstrong, you know, all those guys that were in the Apollo program, you know, they were fighting against tremendous odds. You know, it was very dangerous. They had no idea what was going to happen. You know, so I'll give them the benefit of the doubt, but I do think the portions of it were faked. You know, because when they drive around in the rover, it's kind of like watching Looney Tunes. It's the same like 4 mountains repeated over and over again.
Do you think? Okay, so that brings up another portrait. You do believe we went to the moon, but you do believe that a lot of maybe Stanley Kubrick's films on this were to make it look better than what it actually was.
Well, yeah, there's that old story about, you know, Kubrick can make the moon landing better than NASA did, right? And I think there's an argument there that it, you know, I'm wearing my Stanley Kubrick made the moon landing T-shirt as we speak. But I do definitely believe that we went there, but I think that they faked portions of it because they saw things that they weren't supposed to see, or as you said, you know, there's that story. He came over the emergency channel. He's like, there's something standing on the mountain or on the hills around me. What is this stuff? You know, there's a number of stories like that. So I do think that there's some credibility to some of those stories. But I do think that we went. I just think that they faked some of the photography and edited it to take out things that they didn't want you to see, like the fact that not only the Air Force, but the Army had, you know, plans to land on the moon in the early 60s and to build moon bases up there.
So let's just say that there are bases on the moon right now, and the astronauts did not know about it. Who knew? And how did we get there if it's pre-Apollo 11?
Rockets. And I think that, yeah, the astronauts didn't necessarily know about it, no. I mean, you know, a lot of these things, when you get into the black world, right, with black projects, you know, these things compartmentalized. The information distribution is highly controlled. And, you know, frankly, I am a believer that some secrets are meant to be kept, but you know, you're talking about a situation where, the one part of the military may have known that we were up there, and one part of the military may not have. So, and we did have plans, as did the Russians. The Russians the Soviets had a program called Zvezda, where they were going to build a base around the same time that we were. And our plans were called Lunex, which was the Air Force, and Horizon, which was the Army. And Horizon, I think they wanted to put 120 guys up there by like 1962. And Lunex, I think it was like 40 or 50. So
how did we get the materials up there to build a base? Did we get help from our alien friends? How did this all come together?
No, I think we lifted it. That's the one thing that with Lunex. It's a little easier because the whole idea behind Lunex was basically to build something that could move itself. That it's like a big spaceship looking thing. But how they got the material up there, I'm not sure. I mean, I would suggest to you that we had much more sophisticated aircraft that could get up there than we claimed we did at that time, right? Because that's a discussion of the Bell and and Project Paperclip, and that's an argument that we had more capabilities than we went on to.
Well, I can see where that's plausible. Because, I mean, even if you look terrestrially, it was 1947 when the B-52 bomber was first put on the drawing board. It took its first flight in 1952. Now, here we are 60 years later, and it's still the matriarch bomber of the United States Air Force. So
absolutely.
It does make sense that they could build aircraft that were made to last at that point. And I mean, let's not forget what the Germans built. I mean, in 44, they were building the Messerschmitt 262, which is the first jet aircraft. They built the Messerschmitt 163, which was the Comet. It was a jet-powered glider that would dart in and out of formations of bombers, and that kind of mechanism sounds eerily similar to the U-2, right? That it goes up on a rocket motor, kind of glides, then it lands, and my favorite story, I was telling this the other day, I know the Wikipedia, don't even get me started, but if you go to the Wikipedia and you search nuclear accidents, one of the first nuclear accidents that you find, besides Marie Curie and all this accident she had, you find Werner Heisenberg. He had some sort of a nuclear accident in his lab. He was working on a reactor in 1939, and he had some sort of a nuclear accident in Berlin. So I mean, we have much, and don't even get me started about the Bell. We have much higher technology than we lead on to. And that's why, DARPA is supposedly, 50 to 100 years ahead of commercial science and institutional science. And you also take, what's his name, who was head of the Skunk Works, that famous quote from the Caltech alumni dinner that Jan Harzan, and, MUFON's got its own problems. But, I doubt that Jan Harzan's lying. He said he was sitting there in the dinner when, what's his name, the head of the Skunk Works was like, not only do I have the contract to take ET home, but I have the means to get him there. So, you don't become the head of the Lockheed Skunk Works and make statements like that unless you can pull it off. Right? We're talking Ben Rich
actually,
there.
He said, Ben Rich, yeah. And he actually said, what did he say? He said, not only can we take ET home, but I have the contract. That's what he said.
Here's an interesting question from Up in the Revolution radio chat room. He's saying, could we have inherited the bases?
It's possible. I mean, it is possible. Especially given the Apollo 21 kind of situation, it is possible. Yeah. I think we built them. but it is definitely possible that we inherited them.
How does it stay secret then?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of the people that get sent up there stay there. If they're not coming home, if they're not coming back here, then who are they going to tell? I mean, to date, I've seen no whistleblower that I buy that says they came back. I think Randy Kramer's probably the closest I ever got. Captain K is the closest I ever got to believing any whistleblower that said anything about the secret space program. You know, but there are fundamental problems to these stories that these supposed whistleblowers tell. But I think the way that they keep it secret is, you know, a lot of the people that are going up and down that do come back, you know, the military, they pick these people for a reason. They're trained, they're conditioned, they're psychologically tested to see if they keep secrets. I mean, how many people do you see coming out of Area 51 telling you what they did? Very few. Because they're conditioned and they're especially selected.
So do you put credence 25 plus years later into what Bob Lazar came out publicly saying?
I believe that Bob Lazar, I met the guy, and nice guy, and really believes what he's telling you. Absolutely. Now, do I believe that that is 100% the truth? No. But I believe that he was told those things, and he is accurately relaying to you what he heard. And Lazar's the first guy to tell you, you know, this is what they told me. It doesn't mean it's true, you know, but I do believe that he's accurately telling you what he understands to be the truth.
All right, my friend, I'm going to get you to hold on right there. When we come back with Olav Phillips for hour number 3, more of your questions. We're going to get into the Black Knight satellite. Let's see what's hopping around our skies as well, because you never know where it's going to go with Olav. We just kind of put it on the plate. He serves it up. We dish it back. It's a lot of fun as we do it for 3 hours tonight on Spaced Out Radio. Make sure you check out his website as well, paranoiamagazine.com. It's a good one. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott. Hour number 3 coming up right after this.
We're getting strange on Saturday nights. Hi there, this is Dave Cruz, and each Saturday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, I will take you on a tour of the weird and obtuse on Spaced Out Saturdays, from aliens to Sasquatch and every tinfoil hat in between. We got you covered. Join us at spacedoutradio.com for Spaced Out Saturdays. See you there.
Not ready for bed on Saturday night? Right after Spaced Out Saturdays, hop on over to S4 with Corey Ruiz and me, Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. With S4, there are no limits to what we try and uncover. From government conspiracies to helping clean up the paranormal, no topic is safe on S4. We get to the heart of the matter, of the subjects you want to learn more about. So tune in on S4 starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, only on spacedoutradio.com.
Have you had an experience you can't explain? Would you like someone you can trust to look into it? We have just the place. The SOR Sightlines Report is the place for you to find answers. Whether it's Bigfoot, UFOs, Dogman, ghosts, aliens, or anything strange, the Sightlines Report will get you connected with one of our expert researchers to find out what's going on. All of your personal information is kept 100% confidential. The SOR Sightlines Report, a place for you to find the answers you need. Only at spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there. I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with U4 Cop. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com to the final Monday of every month from Butch Witkowski's Strange Days.
This is Eric Markham, news editor for the Spaced Out Radio's The Encounter Online. We have put together a great team of writers and journalists from all over the world to bring you top-quality paranormal stories From alien encounters to the latest conspiracies, you won't find any of that fake news here. True stories and top-notch reporting as we look to bring these experiences to the mainstream. The Encounter, online, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Do you want to know the truth? Do UFOs exist? Are aliens real? Are the governments hiding the biggest secret in history? We're UFO seekers, and we're on a hunt for the truth. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow along with us as we journey across the United States, visiting UFO hotspots and alien hotspots, trying to document the UFO phenomenon. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
Patrolling the Pacific Northwest, we are always on the lookout for the strange and unassuming stories that real people are experiencing. Hi, I'm Vincent Zunza from Pacific North Weird. Me and Alexandra Sullivan have teamed to bring to you those odd stories that never seem to make it into the mainstream. Stories so weird that will leave you scratching your head wondering, is this real? It's as real as it gets with Pacific North Weird. You can watch our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Become more intimate and interactive with Spaced Out Radio. Join our Space Travelers Club with your new membership. For $5 a month, we'll provide you with special access to the website, monthly prize draws from books to psychic readings, along with monthly newsletter, private interviews, and more. Sign up today to be part of Spaced Out Radio's experience.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
Don't have time to listen to Spaced Out Radio live? Wherever you are, the car, the office, the shower, or even if you're traveling, we're right here for you. Each Spaced Out Radio show can be found on iTunes, TuneIn, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. It's the perfect way for you to catch up on our shows. For more information, just head over to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and tune in to us today.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
It's Cosmic Sundays with me, Elizabeth Anglin, in Cosmic Passport. Let me take you down a 3-hour spiritual journey where we will get into everything from ET contact to Psychic Sundays. It's a journey of listening and learning together with some of the best professionals in their fields. You can tune in to Cosmic Passport at spacedoutradio.com every Sunday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and hashtag Spaced Out Radio, and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back to the third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Great to have you along for the ride. Tomorrow night on the program, we bring in the paranormal weirdo, self-proclaimed. John Tenney will be with us talking all things strange, obtuse. We're going to catch up with him as he comes on this program. every 2 months just to update us with what he is up to in the paranormal realm. 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time at spacedoutradio.com. If you want to follow us on terrestrial radio, you can do so on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of the Walking Dead. We are live as well on the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans, and over 160 countries around the world. Thank you so much for being with us. We're also live on KTLK, The Fringe FM, Renegade Talk Radio out of Las Vegas. And if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club, Macropodine. Macropodine is your password. Make sure you use it wisely, Space Travelers, as Bill sets a password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. Now, if you want to follow us on social media during this show, you can do so on Twitter, at Spaced Out Radio. Use the hashtag Spaced Out Radio if you want to connect live with me during the show as well. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. You can also join up on the SOR Space Travelers on Facebook if you want to chat live during the show as well. You can also follow me on Instagram, Dave Scott SOR. You can listen to us on iHeartRadio in the United States, TalkStream Live, tune us in on TuneIn and download this show and subscribe to our channel on iTunes. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including joining the SOR Space Travelers Club for $5 a month. You can rock out to some Bumblefoot. You can also read The Encounter online, watch UFO Seekers or Contact TV videos, shop at our Spaced Out Radio store, and so much more. Everything at spacedoutradio.com. We bring in Olav Phillips from ParanoiaMagazine.com, coming in to talk everything that's going on that's weird, that's strange with the secret space program. Olav, welcome back.
Thank you.
It always goes so fast while you're here, my friend. It always goes so
does.
fast.
It really,
don't know why.
It really does.
Really don't know why.
Having a good conversation. Good conversation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Joe down in California, I hope you're enjoying your kokanee beer that I got for you that was delivered by Eric Markham and Elizabeth Anglin. You should be on number 3 or 4 by now, so I hope you're enjoying the kokanee.
Oh.
I had a delivery made from the Paracon this weekend down to California. Joe has good hair, so we had to get him some good Canadian beer.
Joe has good hair. Okay.
Absolutely.
I don't.
I'm growing mine out. I'm
I'm not.
Never done it.
Mine short.
I've never done it before, so I'm growing it out.
Really?
Yeah, I'm growing it out.
There you go.
Absolutely. I'm trying. It only goes so fast, though. It only goes so fast. You know, so we'll see how it goes. All right, Joe's on number 5 already. That's good. Remember, you got to have it cold and find the Sasquatch on the can. Now, the Black Knight satellite continues to be a huge, huge point and bone of contention for a lot of people. What is it? Is it a piece of space junk? Is it part of a meteor that's stuck in our atmosphere? Is it an actual alien satellite? I even heard one rumor a couple years ago that when Space Shuttle Columbia exploded on re-entry, that it wasn't actually that, but the space shuttle was actually taken out trying to grab the Black Knight to bring it down to Earth. Don't know how true that is, but, and I don't believe it's true at all, but you never know when it comes to these secret space programs. What is the Black Knight satellite?
Well, as you said, it's a bone of contention. Everybody thinks it's different, right? I think a lot of the photos that we see of it are not actually it. I think a lot of those are actually space planes that are going in and out of the atmosphere. But it does exist. I mean, the earliest known example of it was in the 1800s, that they were, the late 1800s, early 1900s, that they were sending messages from Scandinavia. They were sending radio transmissions to it, and experiencing something called a long delay echo, where you'd send a transmission and then it would wait 1 minute and then send it back to you. So as I was echoing whatever you sent, it echoed it back. Funny enough, I wrote a chapter in one of Tim Beckley's books called The Ark of the Covenant and Other Ancient Weapons about the Black Knight. And my contention is that I believe that it is an ancient weapons platform that dates back to a war about 15,000 years ago that's discussed in the Mahabharata. Basically, there was a kingdom in ancient India. The father died, the king died, and the two brothers fought a war for the kingdom. They had their own little kingdoms at the time, and they fought a war that ended with this climactic battle. And at the very end of the battle, there's a weapon that's deployed, and it's described as creating a pillar of fire that was hotter than the sun. And there's a crater around where it should be. The two cities that were at war were real cities, and there's a kind of crater-looking thing not far from one of them. A lot of people believe that war, and it had vimanas and everything, that you'd come to expect, chariots flying across the skies and all this stuff. Well, a lot of people have taken that pillar of fire to mean that there was a nuclear device that was deployed. And there was some discussion and speculation at various times over radioactivity found in the area where this thing supposedly went off. But over time, it's believed that radioactivity is just naturally occurring, or it's a byproduct of like industrial waste, etc. What I believe actually happened in that war, and if you talk to people who are from India and who are familiar with the Mahabharata, they take that war to be the actual honest truth, that they believe that this war did occur, and it was faithfully relayed in the Mahabharata. So given that, I believe that the Black Knight was a weapons platform that was in orbit, an autonomous weapons platform that was in our orbit and actually fired something called the kinetic energy weapon that was is what struck the ground and created this pillar of fire, because that's consistent with what would occur with the use of a kinetic energy weapon. And the reason I believe that is because we built something, supposedly we were going to build something. I would argue to you that they did build it, and it was called Project Thor. And Project Thor was called the Rods from God. Basically what it was a satellite that carried these telephone pole-sized tungsten rods that were sheathed in this other material. I forget the material offhand, and it had fins, and basically this satellite would come into position and fire these telephone pole-sized tungsten rods that would heat up as they went through reentry, but obviously the tungsten's not going to melt. And the outer sheathing of the tungsten rod would become plasma. And when it would hit the ground, the kinetic energy from being fired from orbit would cause it to be equal to something like a 0.5 megaton nuclear device, but no radioactivity. So what I think happened is that this thing that we call the Black Knight was a munitions platform that participated in that war. It ran out of ammo, and then because it's semi-autonomous, it went to a fixed position, which I believe is L2, which is a gravitationally stable position. It's a point of equilibrium where you can just sit out there and all the gravitational effects of the Earth, the Moon, and the Sun are at equilibrium. So you can sit there using almost no power. And I think it retreats back there because some of the behaviors of it sound military. Now, after the whole long delay echo thing, the other time when it was really widely publicized was when they launched Sputnik. It was actually in, I believe it was Time Magazine, that they talked about watching Sputnik orbit around the Earth and that there was something following it. And there have been various explanations that it was part of the rocket that lifted Sputnik in orbit. But when Sputnik failed, the thing vanished. And then sometime later when we launched Explorer 1, which was the American first satellite, again, this thing shows up out of nowhere and follows it around until it doesn't need to anymore and then disappears. And one of the things the Black Knight does is that when something new and big comes out up there, kind of appears up there, it comes out of that L2 site. I think it comes out, takes a look at it, ascertains whether it's a threat or not, then realizes, well, I have no weaponry, I have no ammunition left, so it goes back. And I think the long delay echo thing is basically you're sending it commands. It thinks you're sending it commands, but it cannot parse the commands. It cannot interpret the commands. So the errors, the fault delivery, the error message you get back is it sends the command back to you, which is supposed to tell you, I don't get it. And so, of course, you send another one, and then it says it still isn't right. But it's like it delays sending it back even more, that there's something built into it that does that. Now, there have been other theories. During the 70s, there was a guy named Duncan Lunan who believed that it was a Bracewell probe that had come into the solar system and parked itself out there and is basically collecting data about us. And he believed that he was able, through modeling the pattern of the long delay echoes, he believed that he was able to decipher a message from it, saying that it had come from Epsilon Boötes and that it meant no harm, and it was just here to watch us. But it described where it came from in Epsilon Boötes. Am I right? Is Duncan Lunan right? Is somebody else right? I really don't know. But I think that from a plausibility point of view, if you buy into this ancient war, I think it makes the most sense. And whenever they try to go get it, it runs away, which is it's retreating. It's got no ammo left. It knows you're a threat, but it's going to run because it doesn't want to get captured.
So you are of firm belief that Black Knight is some sort of alien-type satellite or a piece of it?
No, I believe that it's human. It's just really, really old.
That puts a whole new way of thinking on that. Do you believe the Columbia story? Had you heard that before?
Oh, about actually the one I heard was from Tim Schwartz that it was shot down with a laser. I don't know. The cracked tile, makes sense to me too. So I don't know. To me, the jury's still out on that one. But it's actually in an issue of Paranoia. In one of the issues of Paranoia, we actually have an article that was written by Tim Schwartz describing how it was destroyed by a laser.
That's a big bone of contention for a lot of people who watched it come into atmosphere over Texas.
Yeah, because it broke apart, and that that's why to me the jury's still out on how that one went down. I don't know, but I've heard competing theories about how. Tim lays out a very interesting picture of how it was blown out of the sky. I'm not sure what that would achieve.
Would there be
I don't know.
Would there be a purpose to destroying it, though? It doesn't seem like there would, but that's layman's terms from, watching NASA go through what they went through with the Challenger in 1986.
From a distraction point of view, it would be useful because it'd be distracting from something else that's happening at the time. To send a message, if whoever pulled the trigger on that laser was somebody else who wasn't happy about us messing around. But I would imagine that if that was the case, that they would go after the space station or, all these rockets that were firing up there. I don't know why they picked that one in particular. The thing that always gets me about the about the Columbia is that if it was a message, why'd you wait so long? Right? That we were putting shuttles into orbit for decades, and then you decide to destroy one. So, part of me really kind of goes with the whole, there was a tile missing, and it ignited, it basically caught the lander on fire, and the the heat, warped the structural components of it, and it just kind of disintegrated. But I don't know. I mean, like I said, Tim Schwartz is an amazing researcher. He writes really good books and really good articles, and he laid out a hell of a picture of it being shot out of the sky.
When it comes to the Challenger, there's not a lot of people who have talked about this, but there are people out there secretly, seemingly trying to debunk whether or not that was a false flag event or not, including going as far as finding some eerily similar photos of people coincidentally with the same names as the crew that was killed. Did you ever look into that?
I didn't. I was 11 at the time. I actually watched it. I was 10 at the time. I watched it actually explode when I was in school. We, because Krista McAuliffe was on it, they had the TV on the cart. We had the TV in there, and we were watching on the rabbit ears, and we all watched it explode. There have been people who said that there was a UFO there that shot it with a laser, all kinds of different things. But again, I don't know what purpose it would serve. There is a researcher that found some people with the same names that look eerily similar, and that's really strange. But at the same time, the people in mission control who were there when it actually happened, those people have said now and again that they're fairly haunted by the experience, because the one thing that is a conspiracy that nobody ever talks about is that when the Challenger exploded, that the front end of the orbiter was actually intact, and the crew was alive in the orbiter, the front end of the orbiter, and they actually died when it hit the water. And the conspiracy is that supposedly the people in mission control were listening to them scream all the way down. So I don't know how you'd fake that. I don't know if you'd want to fake that. There are certain things that I have trouble believing. The Challenger is one of them. I mean, maybe it was because it had an impact on me, because I watched it explode live, and I was the kid. But yeah, I don't know about that one. I mean, I know it destroyed Morton Thiokol. That company was destroyed by it.
Well, I can tell you this. I remember in 1986, my principal, Mr. Knockleby, bringing in a television and plugging it in so that way in grade 7 we could all watch that happen.
Yeah, I was in 5th grade.
Yeah, he thought it was that important for us to actually watch it happen, because, as I remember him saying, we're witnessing history here, when this happens.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I bought it as much as everybody, but if you've seen that photo where they've taken the 7 astronauts,
oh yeah,
and then they've placed the photos of them aged, it looks eerily similar to a lot of them. It does. And I believe they got 6 out of the 7.
Does. Yeah, no, I mean, like I said, that's why it causes me a problem, because when you put them side by side, I mean, it looks right. It does. It really does. But, I don't know. There's some part of me that just can't accept that. I don't know if it's because I watched it happen or why, but the guy makes a compelling argument. But I don't know. Something in me can't accept it. I can accept a lot of things, but for some reason that one, I just refuse to believe it.
I'm looking at it right now. I just Googled it up. I mean, it just, I don't know. The only one that doesn't really look the same would be Judith Resnick. You know, that one it seems like they're a little far-fetched with, but the other ones look so eerily familiar. You know?
Oh, I know.
And, you know...
But, you know, it brings up a good point, though. There's something that needs to be said about that. That, to the listener, right? And, you know, I'm a listener, too, right? I kind of came of age in the Art Bell era, and, you know, I've listened to Coast on and off, and, you know, of course, Spaced Out Radio and others. And, you know, one thing that I think needs to be pointed out is that although sometimes researchers come on the air and they profess to have all the answers, right? The reality is that they don't have all the answers, that this is their best effort based on what they researched, based on what they've devoted their lives to. But at the end of the day, you know, even conspiracy researchers are people. And as people, we have, you know, there are some conspiracies that a person can accept, and there are some that they can't, and there are a variety of reasons why that is. But I do think that it's very important to point out that although I am a conspiracy researcher, I am a person. And in the case of the Challenger, nobody's ever asked me about the Challenger before, but in the case of the Challenger, me as a person, you know, I have trouble with it. I have trouble with, you know, why they would do it. What would be the point, right? So, you know, I have trouble accepting that particular conspiracy as a human being.
Well, whoever created that photo, you know,
it's good.
It's very good, but I mean,
yeah,
you have to seek through a plethora of information to find doppelgangers to look almost identical with the same name. You know what I'm saying?
You do, and that's real dedication. But it also makes you wonder, right? You know, how out of the 350 million people or more, I guess now, who live in the United States, how this person found them. You know, it would have to be an obsession. So, you know, it's one of those ones where I think everybody has a conspiracy where it's like, you know, the evidence looks right, it feels right, but for some reason you have lingering questions about it. And for me, that's one of them.
Well, you take Michael Smith, the Challenger pilot, or Michael J. Smith, pardon me, Challenger pilot, and Michael J. Smith, Professor Emeritus of the University of... I don't know what the WM means, so I apologize on that. I'm not up on my American universities, unless it's Pac-10 or something okay. along those lines. You know,
right?
Or Francis Richard Scobie, commander of the Challenger, and Richard Scobie, who's the CEO of Cows and Trees Limited. You know, Sharon McAuliffe, who is Krista McAuliffe, Challenger payload specialist, who looks awfully similar to Syracuse law professor. I mean, it's eerie.
It's a weird one. It's eerie.
It is very, very eerie. I think, you know, the fact that they weren't...
Can I tell you a funny story?
Yes.
Can I tell you a funny story?
Go right ahead.
So I have a somewhat odd name, right? That I have a Scandinavian first name and a Welsh last name, right? And so one day I got curious. I'm a researcher, and like I was describing on my phone, I get something in my head, and I have to figure it out. And so I decided to see if I was the only Olav Phillips in the world, because it's a weird combination, right? And so I Googled it, and I found one other guy in the entire world that has my name. We have different middle names, but our first name and last name matches. And he's Swedish, and, you know, he lives in Sweden, Nice guy. We talk every once in a while. We have a joke that we have the Olav Phillips Club, and there are only 2 members, right? But what's bizarre, we don't look, we're not like doppelgangers exactly. I mean, we both wear glasses, and et cetera, but we were both born around the same time, and we both have the same career, which I find very odd. So, it's possible. I mean, out of the 4 billion people on the face of the earth, there's one other guy that has my name, and we both basically have the same specialization. That's strange. That's really bizarre to me.
I can understand that. But to look eerily similar, and I'm not saying, I know there's a lot of people out there saying, you're making something out of nothing or a mountain out of a molehill or whatever.
Oh, no,
we're looking at the photos right now, and I know it's been posted on Twitter. I just think, maybe there is something to it. I hope not.
There could be, and I've struggled with that over whenever I always put it in the back of my head, right? You can imagine that my head is filled with conspiracy stuff, right? Whether it's ancient astronauts or, or like the jackalope or anything else, right? It's all packed in my head. And that's one of the ones that always, ever since I found that particular article, that one always sticks in the back of my head. And I don't think about it unless somebody brings it up. But when they bring it up, it's like, it's actually a bit of a struggle, because it's like you're looking at it and it looks right, but you're telling yourself, why would it happen? I mean, I can tell you about terrible things that the government's done where they put a flu virus into the water supply, or, the Tuskegee syphilis experiments, or, all these weird, terrible things that they've done to test flu outbreaks and mind control. And, I can accept all that. But that one in particular, I don't know. Every time I see it, it's like a struggle. It's like, it looks right. But for me, I just look at it and I'm like, I just don't want to believe that one.
Well, the only option would be, and we're dealing in hypotheticals here, and I'm like you. I don't believe that for a second that the Challenger was faked at all. I don't believe that for a second. However, that photo did make me think, and that's the purpose of this all. We should be thinking.
Right. Yeah, you should struggle with it. You should. It's actually healthy to struggle with it, because when you're struggling with it, you're finding your own truth, right? What I may come on Spaced Out Radio and tell you there are Nazis on Venus. It doesn't mean it's the right answer. It means that that's what the research has shown me. But when you are confronted with something like that and you look at it, it makes you wonder, it makes you think, and then you move into a place where you're now thinking about things and researching things and wondering about things. And I don't think it's ever unhealthy to think and to wonder about stuff. You should challenge your own beliefs. You should challenge other people's beliefs, and find your own personal truth. So it's actually interesting you brought that up, but I think it shows you something important.
Well, and that's the purpose. That's the purpose of this, is to have that discussion. We can take everything at face value, and I think the Challenger is very much at face value. But there is the ability and the possibility that if there was a conspiracy involved here, which I can't figure out why they would do it, they could have launched an empty shuttle.
It is totally possible. I mean, and it goes back to, it wouldn't be the first time these kinds of things are done, right? There's the whole lost cosmonaut thing. The Soviets very, very clearly covered that up. I mean, there are people who are out there like, James Oberg and others that don't buy it. But, for my 10 cents, I think there's a fairly compelling argument that's at least some of the lost cosmonaut stuff is legit. And they covered up that stuff very effectively. I mean, the Soviets would literally erase people from photos. I mean, it was crazy. You can see examples of it. It's insane.
We have Donna Hare coming on next week to talk about NASA, where she was actually seeing photos getting washed.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So, I mean, NASA washing photos, it's something that is done. It's something
Absolutely.
that, I mean, we see it on the live feeds when all of a sudden something anomalous flies by the International Space Station. All of a sudden that feed just seems to disappear.
Or, yeah, they'll either kill the feed or they'll cut to a different camera. And it happens on a fairly regular basis. It's not something that is unheard of. That photo's really got you stumped, huh?
It does. It does. It's eerie.
You have to see it.
It's eerie.
It is. It's creepy. It's creepy. It's beyond eerie. It's creepy. I think it's creepy.
I think it's totally creepy too.
Yeah.
It isn't so much Judith Resnick or Krista McAuliffe that have me very freaked out. It's more so the pilots, the commander and the pilot.
Yeah, Scobie. Yeah, Scobie. He's like a dead ringer for him.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And to have the same name with the same facial features, I mean, the research is easy. They're telling you where they work.
I know. And they have the same name.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Wow. All right. Let's move this ship along.
Okie doke.
Before we get into trouble with your NSA people again talking about this.
Right.
Exactly.
They're going to kill my phone again.
They're going to kill your phone and your SIM card again. Joe has a question. Olav, what do you think about all the space junk from all the satellites that's collecting around the planet? At some point, there will be too much junk and debris orbiting the Earth that will never be able to leave.
There's actually, I saw something in Popular Science about that actually, because of the rotation of the Earth and the gravity, supposedly that junk is actually going to form a ring. So we'll end up having a junk ring like Saturn, which I find fascinating myself. But it's one of those things. I think that if we want to get out, we can fix the junk, right? It's not something that we can't take care of. So I mean, I think if we did run into that problem, I think we could fix it. I don't think it's beyond our engineering capability. Again, not only can I take ET home, but I got the contract. You can do that, clearing a path through a debris field is not something that we're incapable of doing.
When it comes to American military black ops, I've been watching a lot of you speaking as well as Michael Schratt speaking as well, who I'm efforting to find a contact number for, because when I heard him speak for the first time about a month and a bit ago, I was absolutely dumbfounded because I'd never heard of the guy, and then all of a sudden here he is breaking down every SR plane that there is out there.
Oh, yeah.
How many aircraft do you think are actually operational right now under the U.S. Air Force heading, or other headings, maybe the Navy or whatever, that we don't know about?
I think I've seen enough photographic evidence to say there's probably at least 4.
Are there multiple versions of that plane?
Yeah, I would say there's probably multiple variants of it, but I'd say there are probably 3 or 4 basic airframes that are in use. The number of aircraft that they're testing, who knows? It's impossible to tell. But I think that there's enough photographic evidence to say that there are at least probably 3 or 4 that are in use, that are not being developed, that they're actually in use. Because, you see them at various times, and they look eerily similar, right? And, you'll get a person who gets a video of a black triangle from an airplane, or you'll get a picture of a black triangle that somebody took in their backyard, but the dimensions are the same, the heat signature's the same, it looks like it's using like an aerospike engine, you end up seeing about 3 or 4 that are kind of consistent. They're all triangular. One is kind of an equilateral triangle, one is more of an elongated triangle. They're all triangular in shape.
Do you have any defining features? Can you break them down per aircraft for us?
Well, the two that I remember most specifically is one that's an equilateral triangle, one that's the elongated triangle. The elongated triangle seems to be larger, and it has, in both cases, in situations where you've been able to kind of see, because you can just take a normal photo of something, right? And if you monkey with it, you can start to see where where there's heat coming out of it, like an engine. And in both cases, the engines are long and rectangular, and they cover like a large portion of the back end of it, which would seem to be something like an aerospike engine. So both of them have that, which indicates that they fly very high, very fast. It looks like the one with the elongated triangle has a larger surface area of it devoted to that engine, where the one that is smaller has two kind of what look like engine areas in the back of it, where the elongated one has like one long one. The triangle has like two shorter ones that are side by side. I would say that the larger one, it's impossible to tell exactly how big it is, but I'd say it's much bigger, more like bomber size, and the smaller one is probably more like fighter size. Maybe something the size of like a stealth fighter, or maybe a little bigger than a stealth fighter. But what struck me is that they're both triangular, the two main ones.
And
they're black.
And the purpose of these aircraft, are they for future military use, or are they...
Oh, I think they're actually in use.
There was a rumor that one of them was in use alongside the F-117 during the first Gulf War at Desert Storm.
Yeah, there have been stories like that. There have been photos that have emerged that can be somewhat controversial, where you see the elongated one flying near other aircraft, like in formation. But I do believe that at least the smaller one is operationalized. And the reason is that there was a funny day where I have triggers on Google News that look for UFO sightings, right? And one day I got the digest, and there was like a whole bunch of them in different places in the South. And so I drew a line connecting all the points where this triangular aircraft was seen at sometimes higher altitude, sometimes lower. And wouldn't you know it, it appeared to come out of Area 51, and then it flew kind of southeast, and then it flew over an Air Force base that does that their primary thing is refueling aircraft, like KC-135s or KC-10s that are air tankers. And then it appeared a couple more times through the South. And then if you draw a straight line from the last known position towards, say, Russia. It went like right over Cuba. And at the same time that this was occurring, the Russians had just parked a surveillance ship in Havana Harbor, a really big surveillance ship with a couple of domes on it. And it was just sitting in Havana Harbor for some reason or another, right? And this thing, the direction that it was reported it going would have taken it right over Cuba. And then out kind of into the Atlantic. And then you kind of lose it, obviously. But there were enough sightings. There were like 5 or 6 sightings of this thing at various times. And it seemed to kind of carve a line out of Nellis or Area 51, and then it kind of went southeast and went right over this base that does air tankers, and then it kind of kept going through the south of it and made a beeline for Cuba. And if you draw a straight line from its last position, like I said, it goes right over Havana. So it may have been taking photos of that, photos or doing something with that ship, because right at that same time, that ship had just gotten there. You see, that's conspiracy research, right? You get a bunch of disparate things and you try to line them up. It can be quite a challenge sometimes.
Do you think that any of these aircraft will end up like the F-117 and come out into public forum much longer after they've been in use?
Oh, yeah.
And the reason why I ask that is it was all believed that when the SR-71 was retired that the Aurora program would take over, yet we're 25 years past the SR-71 officially being retired publicly, and yet
right.
We still know nothing of the Aurora program.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that it's not in use. I mean, like I said, a couple of years ago when I was at ECETI, I watched one streak across the sky. So, and I think I saw another one when I was in Nevada. So they're definitely in use. It just means we're not talking about it. They haven't decided to unveil it yet. That's usually due to the level of sophistication of the aircraft. I mean, they're saying that they're still flying U-2s. It's like, okay, you don't retire the SR-71 and replace it with a U-2. The U-2 was replaced by the SR-71 for a lot of reasons, including, what happened at Francis Gary Powers, right? So when they retired the SR-71, there are some people, I think Michael Schratz, one of the guys that talks about the SR-72, but I'm convinced that it's the Aurora still. They just are unwilling to admit to having it. And the sightings of it, they're very careful about how they fly them to minimize the sightings.
Well, wasn't there for a long time, the final Thursday of the month, there was always a seismic recording of around a 1.2 or 1.3 earthquake coming out of Nevada going straight through Southern California around the same time for months? Is that
for a long time?
Explain that.
Well, it's a shock wave from it powering up its engines, right? That when it goes to like Mach 1, Mach 2, Mach 3, that there's a shock front. The air is displaced as it moves through the air. The air is pushed out of the way, and it creates this like shock wave out behind it. And the shock wave was severe enough that it would actually make the earth shake. I mean, I've heard other stories. Like I knew a guy who said that he saw one of these things fly over the LA basin, that he was up in the hills, and it was flying west, and as it flew across, there was like a power outage that he watched happen across the LA basin. But what I will tell you is this, that if they're not in use, right, what I sat there and watched for 4 hours at ECETI made no sense. Because I sat there for about 4 hours and I watched these things at very high altitude that were triangular shaped fly over my head and doing zigzags and kind of messing around a little bit, but they were pretty much doing zigzags and other stuff over my head going north, coming out of the southeast. And if you draw a straight line from Trout Lake to Nellis, it's a straight line. but right over Trout Lake. So I think they were coming out of. No noise. They were so high that there was no noise. I mean, you could barely make out the shape. Even using goggles, we could barely make out the shape. But I did see it do some very interesting things. It appeared, a lot of them appeared to have like adaptive camouflage. So as it would fly over, it would come between you and a star. And the star would seem to shake, like vibrate, as it flew over. You'd see the star kind of disappear, then reappear, and then it would shake, and then it would disappear, and then it would reappear and be fixed, just twinkling. You know, but I mean, I watched dozens of these things fly over my head over 4 hours. And they were all taking the same route. They were all going north. But they weren't satellites because they were changing direction. They were changing, you know, they were making course corrections and other stuff, which a satellite won't do. Satellite is in a fixed orbit, so it just goes in a straight line. So watch it go in a straight line across the sky, straight line across the sky. These were actually doing weaving patterns and zigzags. Some of them were flying kind of straight, but then you'd see them kind of like change course a little bit. So those planes were obviously going somewhere to do something.
I want to get to Joe's question here. Is it possible that these unconventional aircraft are starting to use light refraction or cloaking to keep people from seeing them?
Absolutely. That's the adaptive camouflage I was talking about. And one of the ways, and this is what Ed Grimsley used to do, right, with the third generation night vision goggles. I've done the same thing with a Gen 2 Plus. Third generation goggles are super expensive. And sometimes they're hard to get outside the United States because there's a limitation on shipping them. So like some of the third generation goggles you couldn't get because you're in Canada. So I have a 2 Plus, and it does the same thing. And basically, for some reason, because of the way that the infragreen is working, that it defeats the camouflage, and you can actually see the shape. But yeah, I mean, when that thing's turned on, I saw it turned on, turned off. I saw it turn off suddenly. But what you see is as it flies over your head, whatever you'd see in the air, you still kind of see it, but it vibrates. It kind of shakes as it's cruising over your head. So they're absolutely using it. But if you get some goggles, you can defeat it. You can actually see the shapes.
Gonna try that out. One of these days, I'm gonna buck up and actually get some.
You know, get some 2 Plus goggles. I know a great place to get some. There's a really nice manufacturer that makes some good ones, and you can get the 2 Pluses are a lot cheaper. You get like a Gen 3. You're looking at $3,000 or $4,000. If you get like Gen 2 Plus, you're looking at like $1,200, $1,500. If you get them used, you can get them cheaper than that.
Yeah, but then you got to figure out if they work or not.
They work.
All right. Yeah, but if you're buying used, that's what I'm saying.
But you buy used. You buy them used from a wholesaler.
Absolutely.
Don't buy them off. Yeah, I wouldn't buy them off eBay.
Yeah, fully understand.
But I know somebody reconditions them.
Well, we can talk.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody wants some really nice, well-made, night vision goggles, just email me, and I'll forward you to the guy who can get you some.
We got time winding down here. We only got about 4 minutes, and I want to spend that time talking about one of the lines that you like to use, and I think it's very, very. It reminds me of the same way. I'm going to ask it this way. It reminds me of the same way as we use our slogan, "We believe everybody." Your slogan is, "Don't believe me. Don't trust me."
Right.
Why do you profess that so much of people?
Because in the conspiracy world, you're in a different situation than I am, right? That you have a radio show And, you have to create an open environment that allows various researchers to come on and accurately represent what they've done. In my case, I don't have that. And so the reason that I tell you don't trust me, what it comes down to is trust but verify. Don't trust me, don't believe what I'm saying, go do your own research, because you need to find your own answer. And I think that in the conspiracy world, I'm not going to say who specifically, but let's just say that there are a number of people who have gained quite a bit of notoriety recently, that a lot of the stuff they're saying just is patently not true. And I think that one of the hallmarks of somebody who does things like that is when they tell you, you need to believe me, right? That if somebody comes to you and is researching conspiracy stuff, look, a lot of what you do in the conspiracy world is, you're trying to tie threads together, and, you're making leaps in places, you're guessing in places. And I'm trying to be very honest about that, saying, like the sightings, right? I went through the news and I found, 5 or 6 people that had reported this object flying over their head. And I tried to play connect the dots, your favorite game from when you were a kid. I tried to play connect the dots. Does that mean that they actually saw the same aircraft? It appears they did, but it's not 100%. And I think that for your listeners, it's a very dangerous thing when somebody comes to you and says, I'm the only guy in town who's got the answer, and my answer's right. I would argue to you that nobody has the whole answer. I have part of it. I think I've got a pretty good handle on it. But I think that everybody should have some healthy doubt about anything that they hear. Because you don't know where these people got their stories from. You don't know how they did their research. And I listened to a guy once. I was driving to Lake Tahoe, and I was listening to this guy. And my God, he went on for 2 hours. I swear to you, it was 2 hours. I have inside sources. I haven't, massaging his own ego for 2 hours about all these whistleblowers that he knows, but he won't tell you who they are. He won't tell you where they came from. He won't give you any pedigree whatsoever about where this stuff comes from. But damn it, he's got the answer. Oh, by the way, he's got a really thick, expensive book. It's like, look, I come on Spaced Out Radio because I enjoy it. I enjoy talking to you. I enjoy interacting with the listeners. When I do radio shows, I love taking phone calls. It's my favorite thing in the world because the listeners make me think. They ask me questions I don't always have an answer to, right? But I think it's a really dangerous thing when somebody comes on and says, you know what? I nailed it. I've got it down. And it's like, no, you can't. It's impossible. It's just not feasible to have it completely down. You can have an idea. You can do some research that looks promising, but to say that you're the only game in town, I think is bad. And so my counter to that is that I say, you know what? Don't believe me. I'm lying to you. I've been lying to you for 3 hours. If you want to find those photos of those aircraft, go find them. They're there. I found a base on Mars, right? I call it the facility. Google it. If you Google Mars, the facility, you'll find my photo, right? Go look at it. Go click the link that takes you to NASA where you can see the NASA photo of it. And you tell me what you think that is. I think it's a base. Maybe you think it's a rock. But let's have a conversation about it, right? So that's why I do that.
And more conversation we need. Olav Phillips, thank you so much for being on Spaced Out Radio. It's that time of the night. I'm going to get you to hold on, my friend. You hold on. In the background, we got Mr. Ron Bumblefoot THAL rocking us in with Little Brother Is Watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio. Tomorrow night on this program, I will be here. I hope you will too. The famous paranormal weirdo, self-described, John Tenney joins us, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern time. We never know where it's going paranormally with him, But it's going to be a great show indeed. I hope you are here listening in at spacedoutradio.com. I want to thank my team. I want to thank all of you on Twitter at hashtag Spaced Out Radio, in the Spreaker chat room, the Facebook chat room, the SOR Space Travelers Club. Thank you so much for being a part of this on a nightly basis. By sharing the show, talking about it on your feeds, talking to it to your friends. That's how we get bigger. That's how we get better, my friends. Because together, we own the night. We'll talk to you in exactly 21 hours from now, my friends. I'll be here. I hope you are too. Mr. Bumblefoot, do us a favor. Take us home. Have a good one. Good night.